Ladies and gentlemen, it is here, our annual ICAST episode. So buckle up for a full, sincere, comprehensive look at everything we saw at ICAST 2026. The good, the bad, the ugly, the exciting, the disappointing, the cheap, the expensive, the original, the unoriginal, all of that and more coming at you on this week's episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by The Rod Locker. Premium gear and expert advice from a staff you can trust. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Tackle Talk Podcast. We have a very special episode of Tackle Talk today, probably my favorite episode we do all year long. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about today. But before we get to it, we owe a huge thank you to the folks that make this entire show possible, The Rod Locker. And I was lucky enough to get to hang out with the folks from The Rod Locker this weekend as they made the trip down as well to ICAST. I ran into them quite a few times. So much fun catching up with them, bouncing ideas off of them about what they liked and what they didn't like and what might be coming to The Rod Locker sometime soon. That's the whole point of ICAST, is for retailers and brands to link up and to bring their products to more people. And I can assure you that The Rod Locker was down there doing that this week. So that was very cool. But The Rod Locker themselves are just fantastic folks. They're my favorite shop to order from, whether it's online or in person. They have a beautiful showroom over there in Evansville, Indiana. If you are anywhere within an hour or two, it is worth the drive to go check out The Rod Locker. Their selection of new gear is incredible, but it's also worth seeing their selection of used gear in person as well. They have so many rods and reels that are very, very lightly used that you can get for a fraction of the cost that you would pay if they were brand new. So go check them out over at www.rodlocker.com, whether you're in the market for new or used rods, reels, line, baits, accessories, anything that you could need for fishing. They're great folks. They have great shipping, awesome customer service, a price match guarantee, a great loyalty program, whether it's their free version or their Rod Locker Platinum membership. Both of those are incredible. Just an awesome place to order your tackle from. So go check them out. Again, www.rodlocker.com. And as always, you can use code TackleTalkJuly for an extra 5% off your order just for listening to Tackle Talk. We are here to save you money. The folks over at The Rod Locker join us in that quest as well. So Tackle Talk July is your code, all one word, 5% off over at www.rodlocker.com. All right, everybody, I'm going to pop back in here really fast and just let you know that if I sound a little rough, and again, I apologize because this is going to be our longest episode of the year. So you're going to have to listen to me a lot today. If I sound rough, it's because I'm doing kind of rough. For the first time in like 5 or 6 years, I am legitimately sick, like 102, 103 fever. I'm struggling right now. In front of me, I have like every medicine in our cabinet to try and get through this because this is a very important episode and there's no way that we're delaying this. So I'm going to power through. I just wanted to let you know if I sound weird, if I sound rough, if you hear some rough cuts in here, it's going to be because I'm going to try my best to make this sound as good as it can, but I am on the struggle bus right now for sure. One of you scoundrels at ICAST got me sick, and I don't get sick. I get allergies and stuff, but I don't get sick like this. So I apologize if I sound a little rough. I will try my best to cut around it and cut out of it, but I just wanted a little disclaimer here before we start that I'm going to make it through this. I'm going to power through the best I can, but we're doing a little rough right now. Okay, everybody. Here we go. We have a ton, and I mean a ton to get to today because I just landed, I just got back to my house, I fired up the microphone, and I am very, very eager to give you my full, unfiltered recap of ICAST 2026. So this is our 5th year, I think, in a row going to ICAST and doing this whole episode. So I won't take a ton of time to explain the premise because I know many of you know what ICAST is. You know what you're tuning into today. You look forward to this all year long. But for all of our newer listeners, here is a really, really brief spiel about what this episode is. So ICAST stands for the International Convention of Allied Sport Fishing Trades, and ICAST is quite simply the biggest convention of the year for all things fishing. It is like your Tri-State Fishing Expo on complete steroids. Your local fishing show is Barry Bonds when he first joined the Pirates. This is Barry Bonds at the peak of his powers in San Francisco after getting in touch with Balco. It is just an incredible sight to see, and I want to try and do my best to bring that to you today. So it's at the Orange County Convention Center in Orlando, Florida, every year in July. For a full week, the fishing industry comes together to debut new products, meet with vendors, meet with partners, secure business deals, and really set the stage for the next 365 days of the fishing industry. And the thing about ICAST is it is a true industry show, which means it is for the brands that make the products. It is for the distributors and the retails that buy those products to resell, and it's for a little bit of media. That's the purpose of ICAST. That's what ICAST is supposed to be. It's supposed to be mainly for the makers of the products and the companies that sell and distribute those products. But, and I would say kind of unfortunately, what it's turned into the last few years is a giant, selfie opportunity for the internet. And that part does kind of suck. Like, this is an extremely hot take, but if I could snap my fingers and keep the entire media out of it, myself included, I probably would, because I would do it for the good of what ICAST is supposed to be to all the people in that room. But I can't do that. They do let the media in, and I use that term media very, very loosely. So that's just what this is now. It is an influencer and media hoopla just as much as it is for like actual business deals. So if that's what it is now, then we might as well use it as an opportunity to go down and give you guys a true look at the new products that will be hitting store shelves in 2026. And I do try and do my absolute best to be respectful of everybody at this show because I know my role versus their role. I've learned a lot over the last few years. I've learned how to be respectful and do what I'm there to do. So if you see me on the ICAST floor, I am pretty much like 95% of the time walking around by myself with my head down. I'm taking my time with the gear. I'm taking good notes. I'm taking photos of things that I want to bring back to the show and I want to remember. I'm looking at everything with a really sharp eye and then talking with people that I know to let them have their moment and add some commentary to the products and the show that I'm going to produce for you all today. That is what media, in my opinion, is supposed to do. It's primarily my thoughts, my opinions, my editorial, my facts that I've gathered on my own, my content, and then I do my best to turn that into an episode that is thoughtful, it's engaging, it's honest, and beneficial to you guys, the audience at home. So that's my goal here today. No sugarcoating it. I just want this to be a true look at what I was able to see, feel, and test at ICAST 2026 and help you guys kind of feel like you were there too. So now I will hop off my soapbox here real fast. I will take a big step down here and okay, we are back. Back to the world of new products and gear that you can look forward to hitting store shelves very, very soon. Now, before we even touch on anything gear related, I want to start this year's episode a little bit differently because I think some of you will appreciate this and will want to hear it. A little behind the scenes for you all. The last 3 or 4 years that I've went down to ICAST, I have attended the Wednesday morning industry breakfast, which is like the big kickoff to ICAST. And it's usually like something for the big companies who buy a table. And I think the funds probably go to help ASA, which is the American Sport Fishing Association, the folks that actually put on ICAST and represent us anglers on national issues. The ASA is a very cool, interesting organization. We've had their president, Glenn Hughes, on the show a few years back. But the industry breakfast itself is a really big deal. And I've been lucky enough to get an invite from the ASA folks to join them the last few years. And it's always been a real treat to kick off ICAST. And last year, they presented an award at this breakfast to Steve Harvey. Yes, the Steve Harvey, one of the most recognizable folks in the country, and he's a big fishing guy. He has a great charity that he runs to help youth through fishing, and by all accounts, just seems to be a great guy. Well, this year, Steve was back at this breakfast, but he was presenting that same award to another very special person in the fishing world, Mr. Bill Dance. So you have this really cool moment in time that we'll probably never see again, where you have Steve Harvey, Bill Dance, and Johnny Morris, the owner and founder of Bass Pro Shops, having this really monumental moment on stage and some great speeches and some great remarks. So once I realized what was happening, I actually pulled out the microphone and tried my best to record it for you guys, because as I was sitting there, I was going, man, if I wasn't here, I would be saying that I would love to be a fly on the wall and hear this. So I want you guys to get that experience too. So I'm going to play for you the whole thing. It's kind of long. If you want to skip it, you certainly can. But for those of you that will appreciate this and will want to hear it, I'm actually going to insert Steve Harvey, Bill Dance, and Johnny Morris's remarks and a special time on stage to kick off ICAST right here.
So I think that it'd be best if I just tell you really why I came. You know, last year I was here and they gave me this award, which was really great. I didn't know anybody was paying attention to the work I've been doing with these kids all these years. I've been mentoring 17 years now. I have effectively and actively changed the lives of 25,000 boys across the United States. Sorry about that. That was a statistic. Thought I'd throw one in there for me. But when I came here last year, I met Bill Dance for the first time. That was my first time meeting him live. I met Bill Dance actually years ago in the 90s. And this is how I grew to know this man. In the early 90s, I was homeless. I lived in my car for 3 years. I was really struggling, man, but the one thing I knew how to do, I knew how to fish. And so I stayed alive by fishing. I was touring the country, climbing fences. When I saw a pond or a lake, I kept a skillet in my car, a bag of charcoal, some lighter fluid. I had a fishing knife. I had one rod and 3 lures. I had 3 spinner baits. That's all I knew how to throw. I didn't know they were supposed to look like a bluegill. Nobody told me that. I was just throwing it out there and hoping like hell I catch a fish. Well, I catch the fish, and I knew how to gut them and clean them because my granddaddy and my uncle taught me how to fish, so I could eat. I'd go to a park and pull up where they had them cast iron, little grills, put my charcoal out, have my little grease, and I'd fry fish. Now, one day, I was sitting outside of a Circuit City, and I went inside just to watch TV because I hadn't watched TV in a long time. You know, when you're homeless, you don't have a TV. And so I went inside to watch TV and had the Bill Dance show on. And Bill Dance changed my whole life, man. This dude taught me how to Carolina rig, taught me to text it, taught me how to do a drop shot, but I needed some new bait. So I needed some worms, I needed some hooks, and some weights. So I went over to Kmart, and they donated it to me. Some of the nicest white people I had ever met. We'll just leave it at that. And so I walked out with the donation in my underwear, and I went outside and I started fishing with a worm for the first time. And I started catching more bass, and I was just eating better, man. And this dude, because of that, so every time I would go to a different city, I'd find a Circuit City, I'd go in and I'd ask the manager, hey man, can you cut on the fishing show? I would just hang around. He said, well, that don't come on for 2 hours. Well, I ain't got nowhere to go, so I sat there for 2 hours and I'd wait on the Jimmy Houston fishing show. This cat actually saved my life, man. You know, you get in a position like I'm in today, and you realize how far God done brought you. You start, it just keeps me humble, man. And I'm grateful that God made me remember stuff like that. A lot of people get in my position, man, get to Hollywood, they forget God. They ain't got nothing to say say about it. But God helped me. But he helped me with that man right there. And that's why I said I'd do it today. And I don't feel like crying, so shit. Pull myself together. And just tell you, man, they wrote some stuff on this paper that he'd been in TV for 50 years, 3-time Bassmaster champion, first person to ever catch a bass on the Bassmaster Tour, and all that. But y'all know that. But I don't know if y'all know how Hank Park and Jimmy Houston and all these cats, man, they change lives, man. They're in the life-changing business. They ain't just fishing, man. Y'all in here selling lures or whatever you sell, all that's cool. But y'all in the life-changing business, man. People didn't know I fished. But if I didn't fish, man, I'd go crazy. Hollywood ain't the coolest place to live at. It just ain't, man. I'm sick of it. I get tired of it. You know, they got all these rules out here. You can't say nothing. I went fishing for the first time in my life with Bill Dance, Kevin Van Dam, and Johnny Morris. I went last year with Luke Bryant. I was on the boat with Bill Dance and Kevin Van Dam. Man, I learned more in 2 days fishing with them dudes. And Bill just sat on the back of the boat. But tell you how smart he is. We was up front fishing, me and Kevin Van Dam. And Bill just sit in the back of the boat and go, Kevin, what's the temperature of water? And Kevin looked down and say 64. Back out of here, go over there where the sun at. And he backed the boat up. I don't know why Kevin didn't talk back to him, because I wanted to go, Kevin, this is your boat. You go. He just sitting back there. I thought I was doing good. It was clear. You know, back up and go over there. And then he went over there. He said, what's the temperature of the water? He said, 68. He said, park right here. And we started catching fish. And I went back there and I said, Bill, how do you know that? He said, I've been doing this a long time. He said, the more you do it, the more experience you get. And I just had the best time. And not to mention, I know they don't have these pictures, but on that day, I caught my personal best of a bass. I caught 8-9. And on that same day, I caught a 7-pounder. I wish I had, just clap for that right there. That's 8-9. It looked just like that picture that's up right now. How big is that fish, Bill? Yeah. That's 10 pounds right there. Bill, this ain't the time for that. I point to the picture. I asked you what was the picture. 7 pounds. I said my fish looked just like that. I just told you it was 8-9. Folks, it's an honor for me to be here. And thank y'all for having me. And I appreciate ICAST. I'm going to go change this suit, because I'm going to go put on some clothes that I could walk on the floor and look for free stuff and for donations. So at this particular time, Steve talks about Bill Dance and then asks everybody to turn their attention to the screen for the Bill Dance video.
Hello, everybody. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever wondered why some fishermen catch more fish than others?
Growing up, I always knew my dad was a big deal, but I really didn't get it. I've had the incredible honor of working for him, and in that time, I've been blown away.
Most of us wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Bill Dance. Bill Dance is the biggest name in bass fishing ever, all time, hands down. Period. End of story. Liz is exposed.
He has taken every aspect of fishing to a whole different level because of who he is.
He's definitely the most influential fisherman to have ever lived.
Bill Dance will have an entire book, not a chapter, when the history of bass fishing is written.
We are so incredibly lucky to have that dude be our face for so long. People watch Bill Dance and they think they know him.
That is a stolen art. I will not eat it, but I always catch big fish.
Give me one of them snack sticks.
When people see him on television, they like him, they fall in love with him.
Bill Dance is the exact same. What you see is what you get.
He's very humble, and he comes across that way because he is that way.
Bill was the number one educator when it came to what our sport really was.
You always felt like you were in the boat with him.
And Bill was there along the way. He's an inspiration, is what he is.
He brought professional fishing and the industry together.
What you don't know is what a prankster he is and what a jokester he is.
He's a jokester, he's a fun guy, loves to have fun, and terrific fisherman.
Bill laughed hysterically when I caught that little 12-incher. He had just caught a 60-pounder. I don't know how big it was.
Bill has a natural ability. He likes to entertain people.
Bill's everybody's friend. He just makes you feel like you're just talking to one of your buddies.
We made them all feel welcome. Come on in. We're not strangers. We're just friends who have never met.
He's America's family, in my opinion.
Oh, he got off, Roy. Look at him. That's what one looks like.
Get out of here. He'll make you feel like you're the only person there. The magic of Bill Dance.
Bill, you deserve this award, but you deserve so much more than this. You deserve so much more from all of us. So hats off to you, Bill. And, everybody, just thank you so much, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your career and your passion with me and with everyone.
Bill, I truly mean this with all of my heart. And I've not said it enough to you. Thank you for everything you've done, not only for me, for everything you have done in this industry. You are the best.
Bill, I have so much gratitude toward you. I am a product of you. The whole fishing industry is a product of you.
So, Bill, love you, brother. Thank you for everything you've done. But most importantly, I just want to thank you for being you.
Bill Dance, I love you to death, buddy. Keep on keeping on.
Daddy, thank you so much for the example you've set and for being such an incredible dad. I love you so much, and I am so incredibly blessed and so proud to be your daughter.
We love you, babe. You're the best.
That's great. And folks, to help me with this award, please welcome to the stage one of Bill Dance's longtime friends, the one and only Mr. Johnny Morris. Come on, keep clapping for the money. Clap for the money.
Thank you, Steve. How's everybody doing this morning? Boy, it's a happy day, and I gotta say, to me, it's kind of a little bit emotional day. Just thinking about coming here. There was some conversation about old timers earlier this morning. I know it's like 50 years been coming to this show, and just the memories in life, the characters you meet, the innovators, pioneers, and just to be here this year, the greatest country in the world, and how blessed are we to be here together and do what we do, spend our lives around the great sport of fishing. There is nothing like it. And I'm just very thankful, like Steve had said, thankful to God for our blessings and to have these joys. And I come here also just to, like many of us, to celebrate you, Bill Dance, what you mean to all of us personally and to the sport of fishing. I got I was reading about this Impact Award. It said it's dedicated to leaders like Steve who have a profound positive impact and bring lasting change on growing the sport of fishing. And you think about that, I just got this scrapbook of memories I wanted to share. If you can see that picture. This hangs in my office. It's a picture of Bill with his first bass he ever caught. He spent 25 cents for this plug at Motlow's Hardware, Tennessee. And then just meeting Bill. I met Bill in the first National Bass Tournament on Table Rock Lake in 1970. And like everybody else hit it off, We opened our first shop there in Springfield in '72, and guess who's there? Old Bill Dance. And I love this picture because we sold some, like that old song, beer, bait, and ammo too, but we sold my dad's booze shop and bait, and Bill's friendship all these years. This is a scrapbook picture of little Jimmy Dickens, Porter Wagner. Me and Bill, we went to Mexico, and we fished on this back rack lake. We stayed in these chicken coops, literally. And it was kind of a wild time. The World Fishing Fair, he signed his autograph for President Bush. Like a kids' clinic for fishing and golf with Tiger Woods and Bill. Just fishing memories along the way. Buddies, so many fishing memories, so many laughs. So in 2016, in the company, our Christmas party at Bass Pro, it's our most special time. And we had these Fisherman Best Friends Award. And one of them was for Ray Scott, and one of them for Bill. And if it wasn't for Ray being a pioneer, there wouldn't have been a Bass Pro Shop. These guys, so much influence. This, Bill doesn't know his full reach, I don't think. Pamela said, Daddy doesn't even realize how many people he reaches. This is my grandson, Catfish. I didn't prompt this at all. For Halloween, for trick or treat, he wanted to dress up as Bill Dance. I mean, this kid, he worshipped. I said, what about Grandpa? Grandpa's a good fisherman. Yeah, Bill Dance. And anyway, Bill, you impact. So we were talking earlier, Glenn was, about bringing future generations into the sport of fishing. Betty, you're the master. Here's our granddaughter, Angelfish, singing happy birthday to Bill, Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. And I just, how blessed. Bill, we all love you. You're a dear friend in my life, and so many people in this room, so many people around the world. We love you. We thank you from our hearts for being you. And don't ever change. And I don't think we have to worry about you ever growing up, because that's not going to happen. Thank you, buddy, and congratulations.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Mr. Bill Dance.
You want me to talk?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hello, everybody. Good morning to you. Appreciate all of you being here. You know, when I think back over so many years, to me, all fishing trips are special. But they become something else entirely when you share them. Recently, I had the honor of fishing with my good friend Steve Harvey, my other dear friend for over 50 years. How many, 54, Johnny? 54 years. They say you can't mix fishing with pleasure. Well, that's a bunch of hooey. We've done it, and from way back young. But as I said, recently we had the honor of fishing with, or I had the honor of fishing with Steve Harvey, Johnny Mars, Luke Bryan, and my good buddy, Kevin Van Dam. You know, on this trip to Luke's Lake, it truly felt like it couldn't get any better. Steve, myself, Luke, Johnny, and KBD all shared in something so much bigger than just a day on the water. We shared laughs, stories, and a passion. It just ties us all together. Every knot we tie, what it does, it keeps us fishing. But the memories of that will always keep us connected. You know, when you're out on the water with folks like that, you can't help but talk about it, laugh about it, and live for the next cast. Hey, it's never about just the fish. Never. It's about the friendship, the moments, and the memories that stay with you long after the boat is back on the trailer. That's why I want to sincerely thank the American Sport Fishing Association. Your support helps make experiences like this possible, not just for me, but for so many others who absolutely love this incredible sport. Because of what you do, more people get to feel that same joy, connection, and excitement that keeps us all coming back to the water. So, Glenn, American Sports Fishing Association, I thank you so much for this award. And everybody here, have a great show. Thank you so much.
I want to let Johnny Morris hand him the award. But before he do, I spent 2 days with these gentlemen fishing. And the Christian God-fearing men that you think they are, when they don't, listen to me. These two together, they're going to have some explaining to do when they get to heaven. He set me and Luke Bryan up. He had him tell us a joke that lasted 20 minutes. And let me tell you something. If I told that joke ever, repeated it, my whole career is gone. That's who they really are. Now go ahead and give your buddy that award.
For that, Johnny, Steve, I want to tell you a little story real quick, and it really means a lot to me. My good friend, and for 18, 19 years that I do a lot of inshore saltwater fishing, Peter Deeks in Alvarado, Florida. Down at Alvarado. It's near Palm Bay, Florida. Merritt Island. There you go. And over the years, we've become very, very good friends. I know his family, and they raised a great person in Peter. But I got a call from Peter one day, and he said, I've got a friend that lives nearby, and he's going through a tough time right now. But he's in Memphis, in your hometown. The little boy, his name is Rhett. And Rhett has brain cancer. And you can imagine what was going through with the family with that particular situation. But Ryan and I call Ryan, his father, we talked a while. And over the next 2 years, 2.5 years, there were ups and downs, and the mental anguish of going through having a child in that shape. But during that period of time, Rhett and I got to fish a lot together. I'd go to Bass Pro Shop, the one in Memphis, at the Pyramid, and we would walk around the store, and the store manager let Rhett trout fish, and he threw out there, and the first cast, bang, he catches an 8-pound rainbow, and all the excitement and everything, and he was excited about it. And our journey went on through the store, and we got to the aquarium, and he's so fascinated with fishing. I've never seen a little boy that loves to fish more than him. He watched those fish in the aquarium. Then the diver got in the tank, and he came down and he waved at me. And that was a special moment. We went to the archery range and spent time there in Bass Pro. A few months passed, and we made another trip. The very first trip, I should have said, before we went to the pyramid, Ryan called me and he said, "Do you know any place I can take my little boy fishing?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "It's 20 minutes from St. Jude to my house. I live out in the country, but you can come around a way and get there. Why don't you bring him out here and let him fish in the lake here at the house?" Well, actually, it's a pond. You know the difference in a pond and a lake? It has to do with whether you're buying or selling. So I'm going to call mine a lake. But Ryan and Rhett and were there, and we went down. The lake comes right up to the house, and so close one time it flooded, and I was standing on the front porch, threw a spinnerbait out by an oak tree and caught a 2-pound bass. The water, we had so much rain, but I had a lot of catfish in that lake. So in a minute, here comes Rhett. We fish, he catches 8 or 10 catfish, had a great time. And during this journey, he started losing his hair. And he got so emotionally upset, Ryan was telling me, and I said, "Put him on the phone." Ryan got on the phone. Red got on the phone. He says, I said, "What are you so upset about losing your hair?" I said, "Yours is going to grow back. Mine ain't." So he kind of laughed about it. And I said, "Do me a favor. Save your hair for me. Save it for me. Because I want to tie some fishing lures with it, some jigs, various things. And every time I fish it, I'll be thinking of you. Every cast I make, you'll be making it with me." So that relationship, we went saltwater fishing. Ryan's got a charter boat out of Port Canaveral. We went out, we caught fish. He came back, we went bluegill fishing. We went catfishing again and made many trips to Bass Pro Shop, several trips to Bass Pro Shop. But each visit, his treatments, we were getting a little bit more positive about it. And after 2.5 years, Rhett, Ryan, his mother, and a little sister walked out of St. Jude, basically cured from brain cancer. So, come here, buddy. Come here. Let me tell you something. This little guy is so special to me. And a heck of a little fisherman. Thank y'all very much. Thank you for letting me tell that little story about a good friend of mine. God bless.
Okay, if you listened to that whole thing, I hope you enjoyed it. Steve is a funny dude, obviously. He's a comedian. Bill Dance is the absolute best. Johnny Morris was a pioneer that made a lot of this fishing industry from the business side what it is today. And I just wanted you guys to get to experience all of that as well. It was very cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now let's shift here. We are basically walking out of the breakfast. We caught up with a few people in the hallway, and now, as always, we're going to walk over and step onto that giant escalator at the Orange County Convention Center in Orlando, Florida, and take the ride down to the main show floor of ICAST 2026. And as we walk into the convention center here, before we even stop at our first booth, I guess I should put a giant disclaimer here, and let's address the elephant in the room right now. As you walk into the show floor, it is Koike Fest 2026. there were urchins and koikis everywhere. We saw dozens of companies that either had the baits themselves, they had storage options, they had rigging options, they were everywhere. And you heard me say this a few weeks ago, but it's true, I guess, and it's worth repeating. I'm just tired of them. I'm not saying they don't work. I'm not saying that they're not worth buying. I'm just saying that I'm tired of hearing people talk about them, and I don't want to be one of those people. And if you think back to last year's ICAST 2025, if we rewind 12 months, it was fuzzy baits. The year before that, ICAST 2024, was minnow baits. And this year we had urchins. And we here at Tackle Talk do have a history of sort of bypassing the flavor of the day or the hot trend that will likely die or be replaced or is just not as exciting to talk about. And then we go into ICAST and we actually hunt for rods, reels, baits that we think actually have staying power and aren't just the hypey item of the day that everybody else is chasing. So this is my disclaimer. There were a million koikis and urchins and storage options and rigging options at ICAST 2026, but we're not going to talk about any of them. I'm tired of them. I'm burnt out. It has been beat into oblivion. They're all so similar and so boring to compare. And not to mention that half of them are legitimately just cheap Temu baits that people purchase here stateside and then repackage and call their own. We'll set that aside for a second. But I just want to let you know that we're not going to cover them on this episode. If you want koiki and urchin content, there are quite literally thousands of other videos that you can go watch. Podcasts, I'm sure you can go listen to. But if it's okay with you all, I would like to spend this, couple hours that we're about to spend together talking about rods, reels, other baits, accessories, other cool stuff that we saw at ICAST. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, like I said, we are walking onto the showroom floor here at ICAST 2026. Our first stop is going to be at Shimano. And it just makes sense, right? Let's start with some big boys here. And who's bigger? Maybe arguably one other person. There's like two people that clearly fight for that top spot. There are two big dogs in the rod and reel game, and Shimano is definitely one of them. And I think what I'm going to do here for most of these companies to start out is I really tried to trim the number of audio clips that I insert this year because I just feel like over the last few years, I've just seen a pattern where folks go to these companies, the product development folks or the leadership or the anglers, all day at ICAST get cameras shoved in their face and they're asked the exact same thing. So what's new for 2026? And then they have to go into the same canned 60-second spiel over and over and over again. So instead, I actually took my time and went through the full product lines of the big dogs, and then I formed my own opinions and my own thoughts. And then I came back a little bit later, and then I went to pick their brain on one specific product that I liked. And then we got more information on that one product. And I think it was nice for a few reasons. One, it breaks it up for them, and it allows them to give you a little bit more information because you're not the 10 millionth person that has asked them to spew out the same thing over and over again. But you also get like that minute or two to focus on one great product versus a quick 10-second snippet before they have to move on to the next product to get through that whole 2026 line. So I liked this better. So that's what we'll start with right here at Shimano. I went through their 3 or 4 new products and I landed on one clear winner for me, and that was the complete revamp of the very popular Miravel spinning reel. Now, before I give you my thoughts about the Miravel and about everything else from Shimano, I do want to toss it to Alex Davis to give us a very quick rundown of the details of this brand new generation of Miravel spinning reel.
So as far as what they've done, upgrading the reel, you have an anti-twist fin. That just eliminates the line going over top of the bail, so it just makes a lot more pleasurable experience while fishing. You have a one-piece bail. Then you're going to have infinity drive in it, and you're also going to have a Magnum Light rotor. So trickle-down technology is what Shimano does. So they bring higher-end price point features into lower price point reels. This is a great price point. So it's $149 to $169, and you're going to have 5 different sizes. So from 1,000 all the way up to 5,000. And when you look at this reel, it kind of blows you away. It looks like a $600 reel. So aesthetically, a lot more pleasing, and then a lot more features from higher-end reels came into it.
Okay, so there you heard it from Alex, the brand new Miravel from Shimano. And you're getting a very, very well-done revamp of a very, very important reel in the Shimano lineup because it sits at that slightly above entry-level 150-ish price point. And the first generation of Miravel, the one that we're on now before this comes out and before you see version 2 that we're talking about today, was okay, right? It had a lot of trickle-down tech from the old Stratic CI4, I believe, but there was still some room for improvement. And they showed up in 2026 with a new Miravel that I think did get better both on paper and in your hand. So Alex hit it a little bit, but your big upgrades here on the Miravel are kind of 5 things in my mind. The first 4 you just heard Alex talk about. The anti-twist fin, that's just going to be that little flexible kind of fin. It's kind of polymer material probably that's under the roller bearing. That just helps you have less tangling and less wind knots. The one-piece bail, you're just getting a stronger bail. Infinity drive, you're getting a little boost on the power of this reel compared to last generation. And then the Magnum Light rotor makes it just feel lighter in your hand at the end of the day. And then the 5th thing that I think it got was an upgrade on look. And you heard him say that this looks like a $600 reel. And he's right, because it looks like a Vanquish. Classy, black, sleek. I just think in a world where I have disliked some of the new looks and revamps from Shimano spinning reels as of late, case in point, the Nasky from last year that looks way uglier than its predecessor, the new Miravel looks better. So I'm a big fan of this new generation of Miravel that will be out soon. I think that was the winner for me for Shimano. And then we had another product that I think people are going to be really excited for because of the popularity of DC reels, and that's the new Shimano Corrado DC. One of their most popular reels, the Corrado DC, gets a refresh, but to be honest, I think it's a little underwhelming in terms of upgrades because basically I talked to multiple people at Shimano off camera. This sounds like, looks like, and feels like 99% the same Corrado DC from before, but it got what one of them referred to as a software update to the DC chip inside. So the braking system goes to that IDC4, I think is what they call it, but it just got a little bit refined or tweaked. And now one of them told me off camera again that he feels like he gets like 5 to 7 yards more casting distance with this new version, which isn't a ton, but it is something. When you think of a bomb cast, an extra 15 to 20 feet is noticeable. So that's the major upgrade. They also changed the adjustment knob a little bit for the braking, which for people like me that bite our fingernails and it's hard to get those buried disc adjusters to turn, this one does stick out a little bit more and it helps me be able to adjust it a little bit more easily. So maybe that might not be a big deal for everybody, but it helped me when I was trying to dial in the braking on the side of this reel. But overall, the new DC, I think it's going to get like a $10 increase. So it should retail around $315, and the current Corrado DC sits around $305, I believe. And then from there, you did have a few really, really high-end releases like the Conquest DC, the Vanquish, the Poison Glorious rods. All of those are very, very out of my price range. So I'm assuming they're probably out of a lot of yours too. So I'll spare you the details on those. They did have some new lines. They had some new hard baits. But your real heavy hitters, I think, from Shimano this year are going to be the Miravel spinning reel and the Corrado DC upgrades. Specifically, I think the complete revamp of that Miravel was my standout this year from Shimano. All right, everybody, let's keep moving here. It only seems fitting that you can't talk about one without the other. Let's mosey on over to the Daiwa booth to see what Daiwa had up their sleeve for 2026. So right off the bat, your big 4 things from Daiwa that they were rolling out were kind of all 60th anniversary related. And first up, you have the new 60th anniversary edition of the Tatula SV TW100. After that, you also have the 60th anniversary Tatula MQ spinning reel, and then you have 2 60th anniversary Tatula rods, 1 casting and 1 spinning. Now, the MSRP of these look like it's going to be about $350 for the Tatula SV TW100 casting reel, $300 for the Tatula MQ spinning reel, and about $230 each for those 60th anniversary Tatula rods. Now, here's the thing, right? These strike me as more of collector pieces for Daiwa fanboys versus a practical offering that us regular everyday anglers should be excited about, because they're not necessarily new or exciting pieces of gear as much as they are a commemorative or collector's piece for Daiwa fans. And I think I even heard that I think they only made a few thousand of each of these, so they probably won't even be available for very long. So that part, I guess if you're a diehard Daiwa fan, could be cool. But I'll be really honest here. I was kind of bummed to see such a heavy part of their 2026 new products anchored by commemorative or collector's gear versus practical new gear. Now, that doesn't mean that Daiwa didn't have some new gear that does directly apply to us, because they did. It just wasn't a ton. So some of the other offerings from Daiwa here were the Daiwa Zillion TW150. That was a big one. And while not earth-shattering in terms of like, holy cow, we've never seen this before, it does give us a more versatile reel in the Zillion lineup with a larger 150 spool capacity. And unlike I originally thought, it's not just the spool capacity that changes on this Zillion 150. You're actually getting an important difference in the spool tech itself. So the Zillion that I have at home, the 100, is the Zillion that's been out for a while, and it has the SV Boost system and spool, which focuses on like casting control with extra distance. And now the Zillion 150, you're moving to an LC concept, which uses, I think, what they call MagForce Z Boost. I know it's all confusing, but basically that LC concept, the one in the 150, is for bigger baits, like 3/8 to ½ ounce and up. So not only does the capacity of the spool go up, but so does its intended use from a bait weight perspective. So the 100 is built to throw lighter baits, the 150 is built to throw heavier baits, not just the difference in capacity or frame size. Now, as far as price goes, up to this point, like I said, the Zillion that I have at home, the 150 size, I do love. It's a fantastic reel, but it comes at a hefty price point of $450. And it looks like this new Daiwa Zillion 150 is going to be even higher at like $500 if some of the internet retailer pages are correct. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with the Zillion in general, I hope I get all this right, because I know it's got a huge list of features a mile long, but it is one of Daiwa's most premier casting reels. Like, we're talking hyperdrive design, hyperdrive digi-gear, you're talking hyper tough clutch, hyper armed full aluminum housing. So they use the word hyper a lot in their spec sheet. But you've also got like a 36 millimeter G1 duraluminum spool. You've got advanced tournament drag, a 95 millimeter swept handle. You've got those oversized eye-shaped handle knobs. You get 9 ball bearings, 13.2 pounds of max drag, weighs in at, I think, 7.6 ounces for this new 150 size. So there's a lot there, but it is a lot of reel. It's also a lot of money. So all of that checks out. So I guess for some of you out there that are in the $500 reel club and can't afford this, it is an awesome reel. I'm a big fan of my Zillion, but I think, like most people, myself included, they're kind of out of our everyday gear price range. Like, I splurged for one, and that's all I can do. I love it, I cherish it, but I'm never going to have a lineup of like 10 of them. I just don't have that kind of money, and I'm guessing a lot of you listening don't have that kind of money either. So very cool reel, just comes at a little rough price point like the other Zillions do. And then the other thing from Daiwa that caught my eye this year that was new was the new Tatula MQ Elite spinning reels. And they revamped those MQ Elites completely. And for all of the upgrades on this one, I'm actually going to leave this one to the experts so that I don't butcher this. And when I need answers on Daiwa gear, I turn to the man himself, Chris Martin, Daiwa's field market manager, as he is just a walking encyclopedia of Daiwa rods and reels. So let's toss it over to Chris, talk through the new Tatula MQ Elite spinning reels.
A lot has changed, Andrew. I mean, it's basically a completely different reel than the previous generation. Some really cool things that we've done to the reel is incorporating the MQ body design. The past generation was your standard LT body. Now we've got that MQ body, giving it a bigger gear inside there, a bit more cranking power, more durability, and a more rigid body. Along with that, it's an upgraded MQ body. It's our Zion V MQ body. So lightweight, lightening the overall weight of the reel. That's the goal of the MQLT Elite reels. Along with that, we have the air drive design componentry. So the biggest thing on these reels is the use of our true Zion material that is making up the rotor system. It's actually a very similar rotor as our Exist reels. So you're getting some of that top of the line technology coming into an MQ Tatula series reel. Of course, The air drive bail, the air drive rotor, and the air drive spool all serve to lighten the weight of the reel. This reel is going to have a better balanced rotation. What that means for the guys on the water really comes down to maximizing the performance of the entire setup. So when you're talking about the rotation of the rotor, you're talking about a portion of the reel that can introduce vibration and wobble to the rod itself. With the air drive components that we have, we eliminate that extra wobble, that extra vibration. And so what you're getting is better performance, better sensitivity out of the rod that you have it mounted to. So you're getting an entirely better performance out of the rod and the reel together. Those things really make a big difference for the guys on the water. That's what makes this reel completely different than the last generation.
So there you go. That's the Daiwa Tatula MQ Elite spinning reel. And I'll be honest, this whole thing felt great. Like I might just save up and buy one of these because it was definitely the standout for me in the whole like new Daiwa product lineup for 2026. Now it is pricey, as a lot of this stuff is going to be. You're looking at probably $319 to $339, depending on which model you choose. So a very premium spinning reel by most people's standards, but it looked and felt really smooth, solid, and I'll have to do some digging and decide whether I want to go with this new Elite or whether I want to go with the Tatula MQ, the regular version, which is a little bit more affordable at $225. But either way, I was impressed enough with both of them that I feel like I'll be adding one of these at least to my repertoire in 2026. And then they had some other random stuff. They had like the Mr. Fortune wake bait. They had a couple new panfish spinning reel models. They had the Aired 80 combo. They had the Daiwa accessories like scissors and pliers that I don't really get too excited for. And that was pretty much it. So overall from Daiwa, this was kind of like an okay year, in my opinion. Not something that I'm like jumping over the moon about in terms of new offerings from the Daiwa side. But if I had to sum it up, I guess, if you weren't there and you want it in like 2 sentences, I would say that I like the Tatula MQ Elite. I think I might actually buy the 2500 size one. We did get the new Zillion for those of you that are in that high-end casting reel market. But besides that, I just left Daiwa feeling like their main focus this year was put more on anniversary editions of a few of their products that appeal more to Daiwa collectors and mega fans than it does to us like everyday regular anglers. All right, everybody, we'll get back to the episode here in just a second. But first, the Tackle Talk podcast is powered by Amped Outdoors. And listen, I spent the past 3 days looking at basically all of the fishing gear in the entire industry under one roof at ICAST, and there were a fair share of battery companies there, none of which I would rather have in my boat or in my kayak than my Amped Outdoors batteries. Seeing all of the competition up close just gives you a renewed respect and appreciation for what Amped Outdoors does. They're quite literally the best of all worlds. The people, the product, the price are all unmatched. They're a family-owned company out of Hudson, Wisconsin, with an amazing down-to-earth staff at the helm there and leadership team. And they're not one of these giant conglomerates that I saw this past week that feel like they have more levels to their corporate structure than a game of Mario. And then they have an incredible product because their batteries themselves are light, they're waterproof. Everything over 50 amp hour comes standard with Bluetooth connectivity through their free app for easy monitoring, heated charging, just everything that you need in a rock-solid battery with an amazing 10-year warranty on every battery that you purchase. Oh yeah, and they're also a fraction of the cost of the batteries that I used to use. The quality you get with Amped and the price that they're able to give it to you at is pretty incredible. So that's why I and so many other anglers are turning to Amped Outdoors for all of our lithium batteries. 12 volt, 24 volt, 36 volt, accessories, chargers, they've got it all. So go check out their full line of lithium batteries and accessories today by heading over to www.ampedoutdoors.com. Again, that's www.ampedoutdoors.com. Power your passion with Amped. All right, let's keep going here. Let's bebop over to the Z-Man booth, which wasn't too far away, who honestly, I actually feel like had a really decent showing this year at ICAST. It wasn't the flashiest stuff out there, but it was really fishy new tackle. just real fish catchers, no nonsense baits that I did kind of gravitate toward. So at Z-Man, there were really two things that caught my eye that I just seemed to keep coming back to. And the first was their new TRD finesse jig, and the second was their chattertail. So to give us the details on both of those baits specifically, let's jump over to Brandon with Z-Man to give us the full rundown on these two baits.
All right, we are over here at the Z-Man booth with Brandon. Brandon, I'm going to break my rule here. I've been doing one product with a lot of people. We have two in front of us because I think there's two I want to talk about today. So the first is this new finesse jig. Talk us through this new finesse jig from Z-Man and kind of what makes it unique.
So this is our new TRD finesse jig. So we're doing this in 1/4, 3/8, and 1/2 ounce. Starting at the head, we've got this kettlebell-shaped head. It's extremely weedless. It comes out of structure really well. I fished this thing hard on Lake Erie for 4 days and didn't break a single one off. You get right over top of it in the rocks, pop it right back out. You've got a wire-tied skirt, which we've gone to just to add some more quality to the product. Premium skirting material, as we always do. We've got our Evo-style keeper system on it. 2/0 BKK black nickel hook. So a really stout hook in there for the size. The weights are stamped in the side, so that way you know what size you always have on. We designed it to work with any of our TRDs as a trailer. So your finesse TRD, TRD craws, whatever your favorite TRD bait is, you can just thread this thing right on, go out, throw it, and catch a bunch of fish on it.
So lure number 2 we have in front of us is almost it's like Z-Man's take on a timeless lure that all of us probably grew up throwing. Walk us through this chattertail real fast.
So our chattertail, we're doing this in 1/16, 1/8, and 1/4 ounce. We've taken that traditional inline spinner body and we've attached a willow leaf blade to the front of it. So direct to head connection. This thing is about as fishy as it gets. Anybody can throw it. All shapes and sizes of fish are going to eat this thing, man. I've caught bluegill on it. I've caught bass. I've caught striped bass, whatever it may be. A couple cool things about it that separate it from like your traditional inline spinner. The blade is going to act like a chatterbait blade. It's going to oscillate back and forth. It's not going to spin, so it eliminates a bunch of the line twists and the activation issues you get from those blades. The marabou is all hand-tied to the body, and then the hook is attached via split ring. So if you're in a fishery where you have to throw a single hook or you want to upsize your treble, you need to throw a barbless hook, swap the hook out. You don't lose any of the hair that's attached to the body. You can use the bait as it's intended, as it was designed.
Okay, so there you have the rundown of probably my two favorite baits from Z-Man this year. Again, not the sexiest baits out there, but baits that will 100% catch the heck out of fish. And the reason that I love the TRD finesse jig to start out is because it's like the best of Z-Man and the best of traditional tackle just kind of rolled into one. Like on the Z-Man side, you get a keeper that will actually work with a Lastech, which, as many of you know, is like the biggest pain in the world when you're trying to rig Z-Man plastics on non-Z-Man terminal, because most terminal tackle is designed with keeper systems that are just made for regular soft plastic and not the kind of weird nuances of Lastech. This jig takes Lastech plastics super easy as trailers. So now you have this whole world that's wide open for using like, TRDs, bugs, Z-Man craws, all of those type of things, which do make great finesse jig trailers if you can get them on the darn keeper. I also love that this jig has matte finish lead head on it. You get a good choice of hook, which was a great move from Z-Man. Z-Man being independent and not tied to one particular hook company, like many of the other companies at this show, is a huge benefit to them because in this case, they bring in a rock solid BKK hook to this jig. And then at the price point, it's super reasonable. It's $6. This bait is a bait that I will 100% be buying. I will be fishing hard. I will have success with them. I am certain of that with this new TRD finesse jig. And then the other bait that we asked Brandon about was the chattertail. And I'm not kidding here. I know that we'll get to my overall favorites and winners and losers in a bit, I'm sure, but this definitely was one of my favorite things that I saw. This little chattertail is quite literally a rooster tail body, like your standard cylinder inline spinner body, with a willow-style chatterbait blade instead of that single inline spinner blade. And when I first saw this, I thought, there is no way that thing is going to fire up every time like it should. It's going to roll like crazy. It's going to have issues. Folks, it had none of those things. Like, I played with this thing in the tank extensively trying to get it to do that, and it wouldn't. This sucker fires up every single time, honestly, just as good, if not better, than a regular chatterbait does. And it does exactly what you want it to do. Like, honestly, I think this could be a rooster tail killer. Like it was that good, at least in the tank. And the cool part is, unlike the regular Warden, rooster tail, is that the hooks can actually be detached from that rest of that bait. Because when you buy a Warden's rooster tail, that treble hook or whatever hook that you have at the bottom of that comes standard on it is actually like directly attached to the main wire. So you can't easily change your hook or swap it out. On this Chattertail, you can, because there's a split ring. So that means if you're using this for trout and you want to switch to a barbless hook, bam, you can do that. If you want to switch to a single hook versus a treble hook, bam, you can do that. It's way more customizable without having to buy multiple like you do the rooster tails. And the price point is not that bad, because when you look and you say, oh, this new Chattertail, it's $4.99 to $5.49, depending on the size you pick, you might think, oh, that's kind of expensive. You have to remember, regular rooster tails aren't $1.79 anymore. This isn't the 1990s. Like, pricing has gone up on rooster tails a ton. In fact, I think a regular rooster tail is now listed, even at like the light 1/8 ounce size, is like $5.19. Go look it up on Tackle Warehouse. $5.19 for a rooster tail. And then if you go to the same 1/8 ounce Z-Man Chattertail, it's listed at $4.99. So it's actually cheaper. Let that sink in for a minute. So you get better startup, better action, more customizable, and cheaper. That's what we call a win-win-win-win. So I guess if it seems like I am laying it on a little thick for this little rooster tail shaped chatterbait, I am. And it's for good reason. I go down to ICAST with the lens of, I don't care about brand. I don't care about preconceived notions. I don't care what's flashy or trendy. I want to look at something with an unbiased eye and see what products I think you back home need to know about to catch more fish. This little Chattertail will catch the you-know-what out of fish. I feel pretty strongly on that one. And I know that this was pretty low on Z-Man's totem pole in terms of like importance of the baits they were coming out with at ICAST 2026, but I think it's a real winner and I'm very excited for it. It's so versatile. You can fish it in just about any water. You can catch any species with it. It just improves on something that we've all used forever, the inline spinner or the rooster tail. So those are my thoughts right off the bat for the two big baits that I felt really passionate about from Z-Man, but they had a lot more that they debuted at ICAST as well. Like they debuted their sinking Elastec formula, which was kind of a big deal, and they did it in two shapes, I think, the Kingpin Senko style worm and the Stuntman forktail minnow baits. And both of those baits featured that new sinking formula of Elastec. And here's kind of the fast and dirty details on the new sinking stuff. It seems to sink faster than you would think it would. Like, I remember being very surprised at its sink rate. I was expecting more of a, normal soft plastic, very, very slow sink. No, it seems that the fall rate of this, I don't know, if I had to guess, like when I'm looking at it in the tank, I'm guessing weightless, it probably falls, a foot every 1.5 seconds to 2 seconds, something like that. And that's weightless. I mean, it sinks pretty fast when you think about turning a floating plastic like Elastec into a sinking property. Now, the only thing is that you're going to lose a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of durability with this sinking Elastec, but not much. Like, I would honestly say the single hooks going through this feel like they bury a bit better than they do when you try and rig them on like the regular Elastec. If you're rigging like a Nico rig or a Wacky rig, I just feel like it feels a little better when you punch that hook through. But if we keep going here, they also had the new Chatterbait Evo Elite HD. And the HD version is the Evo that you all know and love, but it got some heavy-duty upgrades to it, like a nano-coated 5/0 needlepoint hook. So you get a much beefier, stouter hook, which is kind of cool. You get a teardrop, like, ring tie that's not the normal snap that goes into that chatterbait blade. You get a solid teardrop tie so that there is like less of a failure point there if you are in really heavy weeds. Again, just trying to make this thing more durable, less opportunity for failure. And it is really meant for like the thick stuff, like throwing around weeds, slop, and just really nasty situations. Now, the thing for me is that this HD version is going to retail for about $3 more, it looks like, than the regular Evo. So the MSRP on this new Evo HD is $12.99. So you're going to pay like a 30%-ish premium for this, which may sway a lot of people's opinion. Like, I know it's going to sway mine, where if I'm in an iffy situation, I might just stick with the regular Evo. I'm not going to err on the side of caution and throw the HD a lot because it is, $3 more expensive, and that adds up over time. And then you had that PZ2 chatterbait that we broke the story on a few weeks back. That's that more swim jig style head on that chatterbait. Only $7.99, so a great price point, but I think that's just meant to come through weeds a little bit better, be a little bit more sleek. Also, interesting enough, in the tank, for what it's worth, it actually looked like it stayed straighter on the retrieve than a lot of the other chatterbaits that I have. It just stayed a little bit more in line. I'm guessing it's because of that head shape. And then you had like bare bones versions of chatterbaits that they came out with this year, just some skirtless options. You had some like micro stuff that Z-Man debuted. And then, interesting enough, they had a new set of flipping weights from Z-Man of what they called the premium alloy flipping weights. So basically, it's supposed to be harder. It's supposed to be more sensitive than lead. But again, it is not tungsten. It's an alloy. So it's a lot of things mixed together to make this final product. But the other cool features of these flipping weights are that they have a matte sort of no-chip finish on the outside of them. The weights are actually embossed on the bait. They're not stamped. They're not printed. They're embossed, so you should be able to see them no matter what. And they're very affordable. It's $5.99 per pack. And then each pack comes with like 2 to 6 weights, depending on the actual weight you choose. But if you want to take like a 3/8 ounce flipping weight, for instance, they come 3 to a pack for $5.99, which is a great price. So that was kind of Z-Man in a nutshell. I think they actually had a really solid showing this year. I think, if I'm being honest, the products they came out with in 2026 have more staying power than the products they brought to market last year, which were very fuzzy bait oriented. They leaned back into those just sort of timeless baits that will be around for years and years. They have a great finesse jig, some chatterbait updates, some new material for weights. They have a chatterbait version of an inline spinner, sinking Elastec. I just think overall a pretty solid year this year for Z-Man. Okay, from the Z-Man booth, let's take a walk down to the Pradco booth. And the brands in Pradco specifically we're going to talk about here are Yum, Hedden, Great Lakes Finesse, and Rebel. So let's start with 2 of my favorites that I saw at the Pradco booth, both of which come to us from Yum. And these were teased a few weeks ago, so I won't spend a ton of time here because we already hit them a little bit. But Yum debuted 2 soft plastics, both of which I will 100% be using and buying as soon as they're available. The first is the Gadget Worm. And that's basically a like slightly skinnier, it looks like, Yum dinger with a divot in the middle of it made specifically for that little O-ring for your Wacky rig or your Nico rig. And then the tail has this really cool kind of finesse pin tail look to it. So a little bit finessier than your regular Yum dinger, but still a very, very versatile worm here from Yum, and at a classic Yum price point of $3.99 per pack. Affordable, useful addition to the Yum lineup on the worm side, that Gadget Worm. Now, the other thing that we saw here from Yum was a creature bait called the Mother Bug. And this is the one that I'm probably the most excited for. It's just a really versatile looking creature bait that you can flip, you can punch, or you can just throw it in open water. It looks like it's got a pretty fast action on those 2 main claws. And then it also has this kind of ribbed body throughout the creature bait. So it collapses really easily under pressure, pretty malleable when that fish actually gets it in its mouth. It's not a, stiff looking creature bait by any means. It also has a solid backbone that goes through that ribbing though, because that's the other thing. When you see a ribbed bait, you're like, well, okay, that's cool. Except when I go to rig it, now I'm going to rip a lot of these. It's going to have durability issues. Like some baits have, this has a really good spine all the way through that sort of backbone so that you do have a nice meaty part that you can actually rig this bait through. And you guessed it, it's $3.99 a pack for a 6-pack because it's Yum. So it comes in 2 sizes, 3.75 and 4.25 inches. They have your classic staple colors, plus some really cool specialized colors. There was one I saw that had like black and red as the body, and then it had really bright chartreuse tipped claws that can be kind of fun maybe in some dirty water. So that's a bait that I will for sure be buying as soon as it's available at $3.99 a pack. The cool part is that I can also afford to buy this. That's one of the things I really appreciate about Yum, is that they have not strayed away from being a very, very affordable soft plastic company. All right. And then in the Pradco booth, we also had some new head and top waters. So we had the Spook Stick and the Spook Stick Crawler. Again, we talked about these a couple weeks ago, so I won't go into too much detail here, but I do have them on my desk right now. I ordered them as soon as they were available on Tackle Warehouse, so I cannot wait for the next good day to go out and actually try these new head and top waters. We also had some Rebel soft plastics that were interesting, and I'm curious to try specifically the new Rebel Tadpole, which is like a soft plastic tadpole. It's got 4 legs, a wavy kind of tadpole tail, and then it comes with 3 jig heads, 2 of which come pre-rigged, it looks like, which is cool. Then you get an extra one there as well. So if you're looking for a cool little finesse bait that hopefully swims like a tadpole, if you think back to some of our episodes with Shan O'Gorman, one of the things that he always talks about is like one of the best profiles you can mimic is a tadpole, because it is just a like defenseless little morsel for bass. So I am curious to try these out. I'm guessing they're going to swim pretty well, because it looks like those legs are going to have a little bit of kick themselves, but your primary action is going to come from that big, long, almost leech-like tail. And then the last thing that I saw in the Pradco booth was the brand new Great Lakes Finesse jig. And it is like quintessential Great Lakes finesse. It is built really well, a premium look to it. It had a really thin skirt. It had a kind of small razor sharp hook on there. It's going to be great for like light line techniques. Matte finish, obviously, because it's Great Lakes finesse. So you know that matte finishes are kind of like one of their calling cards. Again, another really, really solid little finesse jig, this time coming from Great Lakes Finesse. Other than that, there were some other things, but I really think that Yum won me over in the Pradco booth this year from their offerings, both the Gadget Worm and the Mother Bug, both of which I can assure you the second that I see them available on a website, I will be buying those. All right, let's jump over here to the St. Croix booth. And I'm going to be honest, there is not a lot new from St. Croix this year for us freshwater guys. It just kind of seemed like, I don't know, like they weren't quite ready, or a lot of the products they've been working on, they're not ready to show people yet. So there really wasn't a whole lot to get excited for at the St. Croix booth. And it's not like, oh, there is stuff, I just didn't like it and I don't want to cover it. I'm talking like there just wasn't a lot, period. But I will say that the one thing that they had over there for us freshwater guys that caught my eye really made it count. Like they went 1 for 1 over at St. Croix with their new offerings this year. And they are completely revamping the Triumph series. Like not just a quick, refresh of it, a complete rebrand, a complete reworking, rebuilt from the ground up. So much so that I tracked down the man himself, the brand manager of all of St. Croix, our friend Ryan Teach, to give us the details of the brand new St. Croix Triumph.
So Triumph's been a staple in our arsenal for years, and the last time we updated it was 2021. We went back to the drawing board about 24 months ago and looked at, okay, how can we bring a new life to Triumph? And it started really with the handle. We brought design inspirations from Legend Elite, which is at a completely different price point, well above the $115 to $135 that Triumph falls at. We brought those design inspirations into Triumph. We also refined the SC2 as well, so the blanks are a little bit lighter, they're a little bit crisp, a little bit more defined. We updated the componentry, so the guide frame is different, the reel seat is different. There's obviously an aesthetic appeal to the reel seats as well. Triumph on the inshore side was updated, salmon steelhead, surf rods, the entire family was updated, as well as the addition of combos for this coming model year. Automatically, I hope they notice the different logo as well, the different call out for Triumph, and I hope they feel a Triumph that is way more in line with higher end St. Croix than what you would think about for the beginning price point series.
Okay, so there you go. You heard it. A couple things I want to highlight here. New cork. It feels awesome. A new reel seat. It got a new hook keeper, a brand new rod itself, the shape of the handle itself. You really kind of feel like the old Triumph is gone completely. And this is like 100% a new rod. And I think most people would agree that that is a good thing, because Ryan said there, they really took some inspiration from Legend Elite, specifically the redesign of that handle. The old Triumph had like a broomstick handle. The rod itself kind of felt broomsticky, lacking a lot of character. It definitely had backbone, but it had a little too much backbone in mine and a lot of people's opinions, it really was just a broomstick of a rod. And like I said, when you pick it up, when it goes in your hand, it does feel like right off the bat, like a Legend Elite, just in terms of ergonomics and look of that handle. And then you look up the rod and you see, whoa, this is a completely new Triumph. But basically, every component has been updated. You still get that 5-year warranty, all at St. Croix's kind of entry-level price point of $115. And coming from somebody that has had a Triumph and used one a few years ago and got rid of it very quickly because it was too broomstick feeling to me. It was too stiff, too heavy, too rigid. I will be the first to admit that this does not feel like any Triumph that I have ever held. And it's very, very, very well done from the St. Croix team, upgrading that hallmark entry-level rod. I think a lot of people are going to be really, really impressed the first time they pick one of these up, especially if they have those preconceived notions of Triumph in the past. There are some new sizes. There are some new models. They've expanded the line. They added some really cool kind of iridescent blue hues coming through in that blank. It's not just like a solid color. When it hits certain lights, it looks so classy with just that deep kind of holographic dark blue look to it. I'm really excited for this one. I didn't see this coming at all. I feel like I told Ryan Teach this when we were talking before I turned on the microphone. I was like, I feel like I have my, finger on the pulse fairly well for a lot of new gear that's coming out. I had no clue that this Triumph was on the way. And when I walked up to the St. Croix booth, I was like, oh my gosh, this one snuck up on me for sure. But a very, very affordable St. Croix rod that just got, at least feeling it at this show, legitimately like 5 times better than the older version. And this was just one of those times where you pick up a piece of gear at a show like this and you actually have a wow moment. Like I had that with this new redesign of Triumph, and you don't get that too often. You get some things that kind of pleasantly surprise you when you pick them up, but very, very rarely do you kind of have your socks knocked off like that. So hats off to St. Croix. You didn't bring much in the way of new gear to ICAST, but the one thing that you did bring for us freshwater bass guys did pack a punch, and I'm very excited for this one to hit store shelves. I should also say I'm excited for the next probably year or two of St. Croix in general. Hint, hint, nod, nod to those of you St. Croix fans out there. I think they have some pretty exciting stuff coming, at least things that I know will excite me, and that probably means it will excite some of you as well. So there's a little cryptic teaser for you to keep your eye on the future of St. Croix. Okay, now from somebody that didn't bring a lot of new offerings to the table, like St. Croix, to someone that did, let's leave the St. Croix booth and head right over to the Rapala display. And Rapala did it again. Rapala has showed up to ICAST ready to do what ICAST is for, show off new, like actually new, actually exciting baits. And I feel like they've done that for the past probably 3+ years. So before we even start, a hat tip to Rapala, who has done ICAST right, since I can remember. I would say maybe not the very first year I went to ICAST, but definitely over the past 3 or 4 years, they have brought the energy, they've brought the visuals, they've brought actual new products and new gear that ICAST is made for. Sometimes you feel like some of these companies just kind of mail in ICAST, where they make it an afterthought, or they just bring the exact same display over and over again with just a couple new things in it. Rapala, as of late, has done the complete opposite. Like the layout of their booth is very similar, but holy moly is the stuff on the walls and all over the place completely different, and it is chock full of brand new SKUs. So I feel like they do ICAST right. So this is going to be a long list here, but we're going to walk through all of the new baits that I picked up and spent some time with at ICAST from Rapala. The first bait is probably the biggest bait physically that they released this year, and that's the brand new Rapala Strida 180 glide bait. So Strida spelled Stryda. And that was made in collaboration with Carl Jochimson. Obviously, if you've ever heard Carl talk about glide baits, the Gloida, talking about his Gloida. So you have a Strida here, I guess, from Rapala, which is kind of cool. I like the nod to Carl and how he would probably say Strider. And this Strida is cool. And I would say it's cool for one very particular reason. Yes, it looks nice. Yes, it's got what looks to be a pretty choppy action, judging it by the pivot angle that it has right there at the center hinge. Yes, it has 2 rotating 1/0 redline trebles. It looks like a great system there in terms of the 2 treble hooks. But what I really love is what they call the screwdriver system. And that's their new trademark system of screw-in weights that allow you to swap out this belly weight on this glide bait so you can adjust the fall rate. So right behind that first hook, like dead center, middle body in the belly, just before you get to the hinge, there is a machine screw location right there. And that screw location is pre-made, it's metal, it's inserted into the body of that bait. And then you have screwable weights that Rapala is making and selling. And they're going to offer those interchangeable weights in 1/8 ounce, 3/16, a quarter, and 3/8, it looks like. And those 4 different sizes allow you in a matter of like 9 seconds. And yes, I timed myself to see how fast I could do it. You can change the weight on this glide bait and completely take it from a very, 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 very slow sink to a regular slow sink to kind of a moderate fast sink to a fast sink. All of that with no tungsten adhesive stickers, which are a pain to, add and remove. No wrapping wire around your trebles anymore. Just a clean, simple, modular approach to lure weighting. Really smart. I like that right off the bat. So by swapping out those weights, here are your actual new fall rates on this glide bait depending on the weight that you screw in. So unweighted, this bait falls at like a rate of 1 meter, so 3 feet, every 14 seconds. And then if you add and screw in that 1/8 ounce weight, that glide bait now falls at 3 feet every 5 seconds. So that's a big difference right off the bat. And then if you want to adjust it even more, you go to that 3/16 weight, which by the way is the one that is actually included in the package with this bait. The rest are available separately. With that included 3/16 ounce weight, it now falls 3 feet every 4.3 seconds. And then if you swap it out for a 1/4 ounce weight, you're going to fall 3 feet every 3.6 seconds. And then if you screw in that big 3/8 ounce weight, now you're going to fall 3 feet every 2.8 seconds. So you can go from 14 seconds to 2.8 seconds for a 3-foot fall. So you're talking like 5 times faster of a fall rate, depending on which of their screwdriver system weights you screw into that belly slot. And as a guy that has just fallen in love with glide baits over the past few years, the aspect of having a modular glide bait that I can adjust on the fly, I do really, really like that. So that's the Strida 180 glide bait from Rapala. And now, if we move over to another larger bait that they're offering this year, but a little bit on the softer side, let's go talk about the new Crush City Governor harnessed swim bait. Now, on the surface, it is a very similar harnessed swim bait to what we have seen in the past from other companies like a Mag Draft. It has a 6-inch body, soft plastic swim bait, big boot tail on it, solid VMC treble. It's attached to a swivel, which is nice. It helps during the fight to reduce the leverage that fish gets on you. That hook is held up there by a magnet. We've seen a lot of this stuff before. But again, the feature that's so cool here is that the Governor swim bait also features the exact same screwdriver system. So you're starting to see the integration of this cool kind of multi-bait universal weighting system where these weights that you buy are all interchangeable. I love that. I've said forever, go back and listen to shows, years and years ago. Modular designs will be the future of many bait categories. And some of these folks are finally catching on. And the fact that you can buy these screwdriver weights, and now, as of at least today, there are 2 baits that are going to be utilizing these exact same screw-in weights. And I would bet money that we're going to see more baits come out in the coming years. Can you imagine a world where you have 5 to 10 Rapala baits that are all completely different, but use the same screwdriver weighting system? You buy one set of little weights and they work across 5 to 10 products. That to me is freaking cool. Like, I love that idea. It's smart. It's cost effective for us as the angler, but it still lets us customize our baits to our liking and our unique situations. Not every bait is a one-size-fits-all solution. And the screwdriver weighting system that has come out now with the Strida and with the new Governor from Rapala seems to be a great solution to that. So really good stuff there. Okay, let's keep moving here. Let's go over to some other Crush City soft plastics. There were about, I think at quick count, 4 or 5 new shapes that were added to the Crush City lineup, and I am excited for a few of these. The first up was the Inspector, which is a new finesse worm. It's going to be 6.5 inches. They're going to come 8 to a pack. Nothing crazy here, but another worm offering for those of you that really like to stick in that Crush City kind of soft plastic world. Next up, you have the CEO, which is one of those baits that we're avoiding this year. It starts with a U and it ends with an urchin. But I will concede here for a second that of all of the urchins I saw this week, and I mean, there were a ton, like we're talking dozens of companies that seemed like they had some type of urchin. I think if I had to buy one, if I had to pick a coolest looking or most unique one I saw, I think that it's probably this one. But again, I'm starting to dip my toe into a topic that I said I would not dive into this week, and I'm trying to keep it positive. I'm trying to be good to my word here, so I will move on. But there was a bait called the CEO that was added to the Crush City lineup. Next up was the Knuckle Bug, which was a cool little like 3.75 inch flipping and punching crawl. And then they had a bait that I think, ironically, I'm most excited for, but I feel like people were paying a lot more attention to the other shapes. But this was by far my favorite that they added to the Crush City lineup, and it's the Avatar Shad. And you don't have to take it from me because we caught up with our buddy Dustin Connell to pick his brain and get his thoughts on what ended up being my favorite bait in the Crush City lineup, to see if he could give us any info on it. So let's toss it over to the one and only Mr. Dustin Connell.
So this Avatar Shad, it kind of really surprised me when I seen it. I'm like, what is that? And it looks kind of weird, and it's TPE. But I pulled it out of the pack, and I looked at it, and I'm like, dang, that thing's got a ton of movement. So I put it on a jig head, and I was out there with Dan Quinn with Rapala, and we were throwing it, and he had just got his hands on some. They were literally just right out of the pack, and I'm like, what's this thing do? I put it in the water, and I just started reeling, and I said, oh, man, ton of action. It's unbelievable, the action of it, and it's like so lifelike swimming action. It isn't a, you can throw a minnow out there, and it's bobbing and weaving and rolling and all that, but now it's like a streamlined, jointed tail TPE / scrounger / minnow swim bait. So you put it on jig head, you can honestly reel it, you can burn it. I think it's going to be really, really good for spotted bass, finicky, largemouth, clear water situations. We don't even know the possibility of this bait. You may put it on the back of a spinner bait. You may put it on the back of a chatterbait. I haven't used it a ton, but I can tell you this, it does catch them. I've reeled them in on it, and it's just a really cool bait. TPE, great addition for Crush City.
So there's Dustin's remarks on it, but this Avatar Shad, it's like a soft plastic swim bait. It's 4 inches long. They come 4 to a pack. It's made out of super TPE, so it's very, very stretchy like a lot of the Crush City baits are. But I think that the best way to describe it is kind of like a Lake Fork Magic Shad, but actually add 8 to 10 different segments on that jointed tail instead of 3, and then add like a soft plastic kind of lip to the front of the bait that's actually a part of the mold. So you start to get this sort of, kind of scrounger feel to it. And then add another sort of weird lip sticking off of the back, like where the dorsal fin would be, but it's turned perpendicular to the bait versus parallel with it. So the opposite way that a dorsal fin would be, just almost like it's there to catch water, not cut through it. But what I love about this bait is that it's just the right thickness and the right number of segments to that tail where it's just so swimmy. I don't know how else to put it. It just wants to swim, even in your hand. It's so malleable. It's so soft and wavy. And I'm very excited to get out there and throw this. I think I'm going to throw it literally on just a fairly heavy ball head jig and see what I can get this thing to do. I think this wasn't even, like I said, one of the baits that Rapala was really focused on pushing. It seemed like the Strida, the CEO urchin, all that kind of stuff were a little bit more priority for them. But man, that Avatar Shad, the first time I saw it, even in a picture, I just kind of had a feeling about it. And then when I saw it in person, picked it up, I said, yeah, I'm going to catch the, what out of fish on this thing once I get my hands on them. I'm very excited for that Avatar Shad. And then from there, Rapala had a bunch of other stuff too. They had a new size in the clap tail. So they're kind of plopper style bait that has a MEPS looking blade on the back of it that tail hits. Now they have a 75 size, which is going to be way more up my alley than the original version. They also debuted their new spook called the Joystick, which looked pretty solid. And then they had something that I had no idea that they were going to make. They introduced some ultra finesse versions of the Crush City soft plastics, almost panfish and BFS sized. So I didn't see any press about these at all. They were just on a corner shelf in their booth. And I walked up to them. I was like, what in the heck are these? Why is no one talking about these? I don't know if they've just been out elsewhere. I don't know if these are something that had been international and they brought over here. I have no idea, but They were very cool, and I think a lot of people walked right past these. There was a 1.75-inch Little Mayor, so their swim bait that they have in the regular lineup, very, very small downsized version of that that's under 2 inches. Then they had a 2-inch Trident, which was kind of like a single tail bug type bait. They had a 2.25-inch Sizzle Shad, which was kind of like a little normal shad, except it's an upside down boot tail profile. And then there was a 2-inch Fry Ball, which was kind of a cool, weird looking bait where there was almost like 2 stacked shad on top of each other that both had these separate straight tails off of them, but they were sort of vertically stacked. And then there was a 1.75-inch Lil Mooch Minnow that I think a lot of people are not nearly excited enough about. If you like the regular Mooch Minnow and then the smaller size they came out with, I don't see why people are sleeping on this 1.75-inch version, because that could be deadly in like really, really finesse situations. And then you had a 2.25-inch Lil Freeloader too. So ultra finesse style baits with some of their proven shapes that I'm surprised weren't getting more play. And then from there, they also had some smaller, but not finesse size, just like smaller versions of their staples. The Bronco Bug came out in a little 3.25-inch instead of a 4-inch, stuff like that. I thought that little Bronco Bug looked pretty solid. But I think overall, Rapala just brought it again. Like, there are certain brands in the fishing world that are on a clear trajectory, and it's easy to see. Some are heading the right direction, some are heading the wrong direction. Rapala seems to be doing a lot of stuff right, and they made a lot of really smart choices in the past 3 or 5 years. They show up at ICAST, they make a huge splash every year, and it's showing. So kudos to Rapala, one of my favorite booths the past couple years, and this year did not disappoint. Okay, so that was Rapala. Now let's move over to, I guess you could call it their sister company, a company that is under that Rapala VMC umbrella as of the past couple years, and that is 13 Fishing. Now, 13 Fishing rolled out 5 new reels, 3 of which are spinning reels, 2 of which are casting reels, and a new line of rods that are all worth mentioning here on the show this week. So the first one we're going to start with is the reels, and let's go like least expensive to most expensive here. I think that makes sense. And the kicker here is that the most expensive reel we're going to talk about here is $99. So yes, budget guys and gals, listen up. 13 Fishing showed up to play for those of you that like to stay under that $100 price point. So 13 Fishing is dropping their new Stride spinning reels, STRYD, and that's the least expensive option here at $59. Now, they're kind of silver and black looking. It looks like those spinning reels are going to have 7+1 bearings, a brass line roller, steel drag washers. They come in 3 sizes, 1,000, 2,500, 3,000. And the weights of these reels come in anywhere from 7.1 to 8.5, depending on the model that you go with. And this was their like very basic spinning reel. And you can tell by those materials, right? Brass, steel, fairly heavy, but still a serviceable spinning reel that's just over $50, which again is harder and harder to find these days. So that was the Stride. And then you move up ever so slightly to the Slate line of reels, SLATE. And the Slate comes in both spinning and casting reels, and the MSRP is about $80 each. So on the spinning side, you make that $20 jump up to this Slate, and now you're getting a little cleaner look. You're getting dark silver with that slate blue baleen accents. You're getting the same gearing that's in the other reel, but you're getting upgraded line roller bearing, which makes the swap to anodized aluminum. You get an upgraded lighter frame that is now cast iron carbon versus the HTS frame of the cheaper Stride, taking your total weight down to like 6.2 to 7.5. So quick math there says it's probably like, 8% weight reduction when you go up from the Stride to the Slate. So basically you're getting a lighter, slightly upgraded middle option here at $80 with those Slate reels. And then on the casting side, I guess I should say too, the Slate casting reel, $80. You're going to get a high tensile strength frame and side plates. You get LP drag washers, 5+1 bearings. You get a ceramic line guide, magnetic brakes. You only get 1 gear ratio, it looks like, 7-to-1, which I guess if you're going to simplify everything, 7-to-1 is a great middle ground of a real gear ratio. You can do almost everything with it. So total weight for the casting reel is 7.4 ounces, and you're going to get 12 pounds of drag. And then finally, if you want to make the step up one more time, you can go to the shift reels. Now, that is their top option of these 3 reels that they unveiled this year. And the Shift, which again is spelled a little weird, SHYFT, retails for about $99 on both the spinning and the casting reels. And both of these are noticeably lighter than their counterparts we just talked about. So the Shift spinning reel, if we want to start there, is 8+1 bearings. You're getting more bearings here. You get a ceramic line roller. You get a 1-piece bail arm, hardened main shaft. You get upgraded drag washers. You still have that cast iron carbon frame. You also get cast iron carbon rotor and handle, it looks like. And then you're going to get that weight down to like 5.8 to 6.9 ounces. So again, noticeably lighter in the hand when you pick it up. You're also going to get smoother operation because of those component upgrades, and you're still going to stay under $99. And then on the casting side, that Shift casting reel, same story here. You're going to get upgraded cast iron carbon frame and side plates. You're going to get an upgraded drag, 7+1 bearings. So I think the one before it was 5+1. So again, you're making the step up on bearings, which should make it smoother. You get an upgraded side plate, aluminum main shaft, and all of that is going to weigh about 6.79 ounces. And you're going to get a little beefier drag at 15 pounds of drag. So overall, I played with all 3 of these, the Stride, the Slate, and the Shift. And I think at the end of the day, the Shift is worth paying the extra like $20 for. It just felt smoother. It felt lighter. And of the 3 options here, the price difference was so minimal that I just kept picking up that Shift out of all 3. So the only thing I wasn't a giant fan of with these reels was the handle paddles, because when you actually grab them to turn the handles, those knobs are a little bigger than I'm used to. It was kind of clunky to get used to gripping and starting out, but not a big deal. You'll get used to it after probably, a couple minutes or so, but it was just something that threw me off for a second. I'm used to smaller paddles on my casting reels, but I'll tell you, I do really like that 13 Fishing came out with not 1, not 2, but 3 sets of reels under $100. So I have shouted from the rooftops to anybody that would listen to me at ICAST over the past couple years, that $100 price point is still a very special thing. Like if you can keep a rod or a reel under $100, it opens up such a wider customer base. And then once you cross that $100 threshold and your reel is $105, $110, well, it might as well be $125, $130, $140, because now you're in the competition of $150 and under reels. Once people get over spending over $100, the next logical step is $150. So I just think if you can keep anything under $100, if you can make it those magical 2 digits, like if you can make it 99, 89, something like that, you are in a league all your own that is getting smaller and smaller by the day in fishing. And it's cool to see 13 Fishing embrace that. I love seeing these companies come out with budget options for your regular weekend warrior anglers who, let's be honest, if you're listening to Tackle Talk, you're probably like me. You're fairly frugal. You want to make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck. And we don't have $1,000 to spend on combos all the time. This stuff right here is the stuff that I think more companies should be doing, and I think slowly are doing. And then if we want to abandon the reel side of things for a second, let's go over to rods with 13 Fishing, because there was a new big product in the 13 Fishing line for rods, and it was the Enzo rods. So spelled E-N-Z-O. These rods are priced at $149, and they were quite clearly made to complement the Shift casting reels and spinning reels. So you get a $99 reel, a $149 rod, and you're getting a really solid combo here from 13 Fishing. Now, those Enzo rods themselves were designed by Dustin Connell, and you already heard us catch up with Dustin to talk about the Avatar Shad. You knew we weren't going to let him get off the hook that easy without giving us his thoughts on his new signature line of Enzo rods either. So let's toss it back to our conversation with Dustin to get some details on these Enzos.
We have 18 different rods in this lineup. So 20 years in the making, I've tried to learn as many techniques as I can, but we have a rod for every technique. And there's a lot of passion into this, So I went out to my pond at my house, and I went down to Lake Mitchell. That's where I grew up at. And I just remember me as a kid learning all these techniques. So I'm like, man, I want to make a rod for this. I want to make a rod for that. So the rods look awesome. We did a custom handle grip on the rod. We moved the grip back. when you put a reel on it, it fits perfectly on your hand. We have an airfoil butt on the rod, the end of the rod, super sensitive, super light. They're at $150. And, so these are my rods. I designed them all. I changed everything about, what I thought, hey, I might need a little more tip in the rod. I need a little more strength here. Maybe let's make a 7.3 heavy. Oh, let's make a frog rod. So every technique, I said, I need a rod for that. So this is kind of a big reemergence of 13 fishing. You can tell just by this product, but the reels are coming out. Awesome reels. I've been using them. Them are the Shift reels. Spinning reel's awesome. Bait caster's awesome. I catch them all the time on them. I'm going up north. I'm about to catch them again on that Shift spinning reel. So I'm really excited about my new Enzo rods. I've spent a ton of time into these. They're not going to break the bank, and I promise they are for everyday anglers that they're passionate about it, and the Enzo's for you.
All right. So there was Dustin's remarks. Again, we appreciate Dustin taking some time with us. Everybody was super busy at this show. But when you have a signature line of rods come out with 13 and Rapala and stuff, you want to make sure that you get the full backstory behind them. So kudos to Dustin. The rods do feel great. Here's your really quick breakdown of them. Japanese 36-ton graphite blanks, the Evolve tangle-free stainless steel guide frames. You have zirconia inserts on those guides. You have AAA cork for the main grip. You have the Evolve airfoil carbon butt sections, the Evolve soft touch reel seat. You have Evolve snaggletooth hook keepers, which were really cool. And then you get a 5-year limited warranty with these rods, all at $150. So picking these rods up, the only thing, and I mean this, what I'm about to say as a compliment to what 13 has done lately, it didn't feel like the 13 rods that I used to own, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. You can clearly tell that there has been a shift in the priorities, a shift in the manufacturing, a shift in the design elements of 13 rods as of late. That Rapala influence and that Rapala team, once they came in and kind of took over 13, you can feel differences in your hand from this rod to like way back in the day when I had like an Omen rod. They feel like very, very different builds. Like this rod that I was holding here, this Enzo, has like raised lettering for the Enzo on the shaft of that rod right there on the blank. It's got a really nice feeling cork handle for $150 because there is such thing as like very different types of cork. All cork is not created equal. You heard here, this is like AAA cork. There is very, very different qualities that you can feel for when you pick up cork handle rods. This one felt great for $150. I did like the reel seat. The hook keeper is very nice. I just think nowadays it's like the little things on some of these rods that really, really impress you. Now, I will say that these rods are extremely glossy and flashy looking. And not flashy, like flashy might not be the right word. It's not flashy like it's, lime green or bright yellow or something like that. It's just not the sort of muted black, matte black that a lot of these rod companies have gone to. This was a little bit more shiny, a little bit more epoxy and glossy looking to it. It looked a little flashier just in terms of the finish. It's still a black rod with red accents, but a shinier version of that versus the way a lot of these other rods are going now. Now, the one thing that this rod had that I'm not a giant fan of, and you guys know that, is micro guides. But I'm just having to learn as years go by that more and more rods are moving to micro guides. So I guess I just need to stop complaining about it and just deal with it. But yeah, I'm still not a giant fan of like super small micro guides. I found both rods, especially the spinning rod, to have some really nice contouring and ergonomics around the handle and the reel seat. Like, for instance, on the spinning rod, there was a really nice little shaping down there where my pinky normally sits that felt pretty pleasant to me. That's just those kind of weird little nuances to rods as you pick up, rod after rod after rod on the showroom floor that I noticed when I picked up that spinning model. But overall, I think the Shift and the Enzo were probably my picks here. The Shift reels, the Enzo rod, I think I'd put them both, average to slightly above average for the price point. I didn't completely, love or hate either one of them, but keeping in mind that these are 3 new reels under $100 and a new signature rod that's under $150, those are wins in my book by themselves for 13 fishing. So for all of you budget conscious anglers out there, 13 would be something I would keep an eye on for sure. And it's also probably worth mentioning that now I think we have officially hit the mark where there are no or very few pre-Rapala 13 fishing products remaining on the freshwater bass side for rods and reels. Like when Rapala took over 13, you heard the president of Rapala VMC say it in our Big Four episode. Travis Tuma said, hey, they bought 13 with the plan of doing a complete overhaul, which in my opinion was needed at the time. And I think they're doing a really good job with that. Cohesive product lines, developing a signature look, hitting really important price points. I think this was a really good look for 13. And I think it gets me and a lot of other people excited for what could be coming in the future for 13. So that was 13 Fishing. Let's leave the 13 Fishing booth. Let's hop over and visit with the folks over at Lose to check in and see what they had new for 2026. And first off, let's start with a reel that caught my eye the quickest, even though, again, I kind of think, and this was a theme for me, I guess, this year, I don't think this was their main focus, but it is a new category for Lose and an insane price point. So let's take a look at the brand new Lose Excel DB. And the Excel probably sounds familiar because I think a year ago, that was Lu's new line of budget casting reels. They came out, I think, last year at ICAST. They start at $79, just giving people a chance to get into the Luz family with an extremely budget-conscious price point. And then from there, you can go up to like the Excel RX for $109 that has that upgraded RX braking system. But this new Excel ends in DB, and you can probably guess what that stands for. Yes, digital braking. So to hear a little bit more before I give you my thoughts, let's toss it over to Tony Merrill from Luz to give us the scoop on the brand new Excel DB.
Absolutely. This is the first digital braking system that you'll see within Luz this year. Really exciting thing coming for us. And if you're a follower of Luz, if you fish our product, you're probably familiar with our Paramag braking systems, Paramag RX and Paramag ITB, and there's definitely a group of folks out there that really want a digital braking system, and we're all about just offering options for what people want to fish, and that's exactly what this is. So we now have the Excel DB baitcast reel and baitcast combo, and it really is just an option for digital braking if you want a reel that's going to do all the work for you. Set it and forget it, and whether you're an experienced angler or an angler just starting out, this reel is gonna be really great for you. It's our Excel reel, if you're familiar with that. Graphite frame, 5-bearing system with that DB system in there, and the price point is awesome on the reel. Price point on that combo is awesome. At this point, there's no other combos with digital braking on the market, so just really excited to offer this one to the market.
So yeah, there you go, the new Excel DB from Luz very first digital braking system ever, and it retails for $149, under $150, making this, to my knowledge at least, the most affordable DC reel from any major American brand. Now, is this going to perform like a $300 DC reel? I don't know. I doubt it, because it's built on a budget reel frame and the bones of their very, very basic budget reel, the Excel. So you know what you're getting there, but also, again, it's $150. And the big kicker here is that they're going to offer the Excel DB combo, which is that Excel DB reel plus an Excel rod for $180. So for $30 more, you get the Excel rod as well, giving you a full digital braking combo for $180, which is freaking bonkers. Nobody else is doing that right now. I can tell you, not even close. So time will tell on the performance of this for sure, but the price alone is going to make this a very, very interesting offer from Luz. And I think you're going to have a lot of people use this as their gateway into DC reels without having to spend $250, $300, $350 to dip their toe in the DC pool. So that was the Excel DB. Definitely the one that caught my eye the most, just because as someone that likes to kind of keep a pulse on the industry as a whole and the trends and where things are priced, that is a shakeup right there. Someone coming out with a $150 DC reel and a $180 DC combo is going to turn a lot of heads here really soon. And then from there, they had some other stuff too that's definitely worth mentioning. They had the Speed Spool ITB 200. So you're getting like, aluminum frame, Paramag RX braking system, 11 bearings, aluminum alloy, speed gears, all that kind of stuff. So in a 200 size on the Speed Spool, you had the Speed Spool RX 200. I think the Speed Spool RX had like a 9.5-to-1 gear ratio. One of those reels did, and it was like super, super fast. But you're starting to see them integrate these ITB and RX braking systems throughout a lot of their lineups. So you're getting the Hypermag ITB 150, which was really, really impressive too. So that's something that I'll probably keep my eye on. Felt super smooth. You get a magnesium frame on that, C45 carbon side plates, the Paramag ITB braking system, which is like their best magnetic braking system. That's their top of the line over there at Lew's now. You get hard anodized aluminum speed gears, a P2 super pinion, just a pretty impressive reel from that Hypermag ITB 150. You're also going to have a custom TLX 150, which is a cool little casting reel. And then the other one that turned my head was the Hypermag spinning reel with the shallow spool that they came out with. That reel feels great. 7-to-1 gear ratio, which is a lot for a spinning reel. It's very, very fast. I wish I could remember the exact number. One of their product development guys told me what it picked up inches per turn. I want to say it was something silly. It was like, I don't think it was 42, but it was something like that, like 42 inches per turn, something nuts that reel was picking up just with one full turn of that reel. So a very fast reel for Lew's. Magnesium frame and C40 carbon skeletal rotor. You have even lay slow oscillation, so that line is not really crisscrossing and you're getting great even lay on that spool. You have clutch guard protection. That was one that kind of turned my head a little bit too, and I kept an eye on. And, maybe if I dive into a high-end spinning reel from Lew's, that would be one worth checking out for sure. I've also talked to Mark Zona, and he was heavily involved in the design of this, and he has a lot of really impressive things to say about this spinning reel. So I would say those. Obviously, the Hypermag ITB 150 was awesome, looked great, felt great. That ITB braking system that Lew's has is awesome. The Hypermag 150 ITB retails at $399, I think. So looked and felt high-end enough to warrant that price point to me. The price point on that Hypermag shallow spool that I just talked about, the spinning reel, the cool part about that is, like I said, it's one of the top of the line, if not the top of the line spinning reel for Lew's, and it comes in at $220, $230. So I don't want to say that it's only $220 or only $230 because, that's still a very expensive reel. But in a world where people's top of the line spinning reels are, $300, $400 plus. I mean, shoot, that Shimano Vanquish we talked about earlier was like $530. So this Hypermag with the new shallow spool option is like $220 to $230. I think that's pretty solid. So that was Lew's. Quite a few new reels, some line extensions, some braking additions, but overall a pretty solid year for Lew's. And I'm really interested to see the market reaction to that Excel DB, $150 DC reel. Okay, next up, let's take a stroll over to Strike King because obviously those two booths are kind of connected. Strike King and Lew's are both owned by Rather Outdoors. So we'll take like 2 steps over to the right and let's go walk through the Strike King setup for 2026. And Strike King had, I think it was probably about 8 or 9 products that are worth mentioning here on the show. The first was the one that caught my eye the most, and I think it's just somewhat practical, useful, something that I think I will actually buy, and it's their new FG worm. Now, this is a little finesse worm available in a 4-inch and a 5.5-inch size, and it was designed by a guy that knows a thing or two about finesse worms, one of the best young anglers in the game right now, Easton Fothergill. And Easton won the Classic 2 years ago on a Strike King finesse worm, so it seems fitting that he gets to design his own. And he went with a cool little like antennaed tail on this worm where it has 4 little legs that stick out on each side, so 8 total. And that probably helps this worm hover a little bit and stay up just a little bit longer on the fall and help it catch more water kind of on its back end when it is falling. And then you end up with, honest to goodness, what's probably the reason why a lot of these urchins and koikis are so popular, because koikis have a lot of individual small appendages that quiver at like the slightest movement, drawing bites. And that quiver is a real thing. Like that quiver is very, very important in finesse baits. Like think to some of the most bite-getting baits in the world. Think of a weightless Senko. What does a Senko do on the fall? it quivers. Like that's probably what you're going to get with these 8 little tiny legs coming off the back of this little finesse worm from Strike King. I think you're going to get a little bit of quiver back there. And if so, I will probably be buying quite a few packs of these and playing around with them here in Ohio. So they're $7.99 a pack. They come in 12 colors. And maybe unfortunately, these were one of the few Strike King baits that I really liked this year. Now, I guess I probably just gave away what I think about most of the other Strike King offerings here, but we'll still get to some of them. The other one I did really enjoy was the 2-time spinnerbait. And it's just what it sounds like. It is a spinnerbait that features not one, but 2 arms up at the top with 2 individual double blade systems. So what I like about this is that they're not full wire double spinnerbaits. Those 2 blade systems are actually like free swinging. So they can clank and sort of dangle around. You're not going to have to worry about them bending too much because, again, they are just sort of these free swinging. Think of more like 2 giant underspins, except at the top of this bait. And obviously you have 2 blades on there. You have a willow blade and you have a small little kind of Colorado looking blade. And that was kind of what I was worried about when I heard some very early rumors about a double spinnerbait coming out from Strike King, was bending that wire, having some issues with hookups because that is a lot of wire for those fish to get in their mouths. You don't have to worry about that because it's going to collapse really easily because, again, it is this sort of free swinging blade system and not just a rigid 2-wire system coming off the top of this bait. So the 2-time spinnerbait is going to be $10.99 each. It looks like you're going to get a 5/0 long shank hook on there. You get a bullet head. It just looks like something that I might actually buy and use. I'm probably going to use it in dirty water for me. And it could be a fun little replacement for an Alabama rig in certain snaggy situations. I mean, you know how many times in the fall around here and early winter that I want to throw an Alabama rig, but there's just too much cover around and I'm going to lose Alabama rigs like nobody's business because we're in a lot of snaggy river situations, but they are eating an Alabama rig. So you have to kind of have that devil on your shoulder to go, well, you should throw it because you're probably going to get bit. And then the other guy on your shoulder goes, well, yeah, you're going to throw it and you're going to lose it every other cast. Or you're going to have to go over there and blow up the spot to try and shake it loose because you got it snagged down there. So in those situations where I want to throw an A rig up close to like a giant tree or a log jam or something after I pick off those fish that were out from it and I have to get closer to the cover, this is going to be something in my arsenal for like fall and winter that I will probably reach for. The only thing about this that I'm curious about is how high it's going to want to ride in the water column with those double blades. Hopefully it'll be able to get down a little bit, but time will tell on that one. And then from there, I'm going to be honest, Strike King was fairly disappointing. You had like the jointed mock shad. You had their new Hustlin' Hog, which is like a smaller version, a little bit more herring looking, but it's priced at $40, which looked way too expensive for what it is. And then they had like a $10 Bitsy Glide that was 2.75 inches that looked interesting enough. I'll probably buy one of them and just play around with it and see how it goes. They had a winged fluke called the Spotlight Wing Minnow. Their Patroller plopper style bait, I'll be honest, felt cheap and felt like something I would get from, a dollar store or Temu or something. I was not impressed with that Patroller plopper at all. And then some of those baits that everybody else came out with too, the Monkey See, Monkey Do bait of the year that we are ignoring. Strike King definitely had one of those as well. So overall, Strike King, I'm going to give them a meh. I guess that's like my official grade for Strike King. Meh. Okay, everybody, we'll get back to the episode here in just a second. But first, the Tackle Talk podcast is brought to you in part by Humminbird. And as of the past year or so, Humminbird has unveiled the most impressive line of graphs and fish finders that we've seen in a long time with their popular new Explore series. And the Humminbird Explore fish finders deliver industry-leading sonar and mapping in a simple, intuitive interface, giving anglers top-tier performance without sacrificing ease of use. Those Explore units just offer such an intuitive interface on the water that it makes it the easiest way for you to see clearer, you can fish smarter, you can feel more confident with the water that you're actually fishing. And every Explore unit comes preloaded with thousands of industry-leading Lake Master and Coastmaster maps included. So that's not even something you have to buy after the fact like you used to. It already comes on those units. And Explore's best-in-class clarity give you an incredible look underwater because it just has that bright, easy-to-read screen that performs in all conditions. So whether you go with a 9-inch, a 10-inch, or a 12-inch, you can't go wrong with an Explore. For more information or to grab your own Explore graph, you can head over to www.humminbird.com/explore. And that's spelled XPLORE. Again, that's www.humminbird.com/explore to see for yourself why there is so much more to explore with Humminbird. The Tackle Talk podcast is also brought to you in part by Minn Kota. And today, for you boat folks out there, let's talk for a second about the incredible Minn Kota Ultrex. The Minn Kota Ultrex is built to provide unmatched control of your boat with effortless steering from an ultra-responsive foot control and the ability to lock down that spot when you need it most. Because at the tap of a button, you now seamlessly turn any spot into a rock-solid stronghold with that spot lock technology, the industry's gold standard in GPS anchoring. So, to see for yourself why Ultrex is trusted by pros and weekend warriors alike due to its rugged durability and reliability at any level of competitive fishing, you can head over to www.minnkotamotors.com/Ultrex. Again, that's www.minnkotamotors.com/Ultrex to see for yourself why Ultrex is built to fish. Okay, let's jump over from Strike King and let's walk over to GSM, who you guys know from our 4-part series holds a ton of brands. They have Yamamoto, Big Bite Baits, Dobbins, Bill Lewis, RoboWorm, Buka Brands, Buckeye Lures, and a ton more under their sort of umbrella. And I will tip my hat to GSM here. They had a ton of new products. So I am going to have to go through these relatively quickly to try and get through most of them, but I'll start with some of my favorites. I think, maybe ironically, my favorite product that GSM put out this year was from Yamamoto, and it was called the Covert Senko. Now, I don't really understand why they're calling it a covert Senko because it's not really covert at all. It's kind of the opposite. They added appendages to a Senko versus making it more sleek and more like, undetectable or whatever covert means. So I think the name's a little weird, but it's a bait that I'm going to buy. So picture looking at a Senko, like a standard Senko, and then add 6 tiny kind of bug-like legs sticking out of one of the tail sides. So you've got 3 legs on each side, 6 total. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right and left, just on one of the tails of that Senko. And these are tiny little bug legs that kind of look like a centipede or something, really small. And then on the other side, so the other tail end of that Senko, do the same thing, except instead of 6 tiny legs, there's 4 tiny legs, 2 on each side. And when I saw this at first, I picked it up and I immediately said to myself, and then I actually said it to Crispin when I saw him a little bit later. I said, man, I'm going to buy a couple packs of these. I'm going to take them all out of the package and I'm going to immediately cut them all in half. Because cut in half, these almost make the perfect Hellgrammite bait. Because the problem with a lot of Hellgrammite baits, or at least the problem I have with them, is that they're not perfectly round. Everybody tries to make these flat or semi-flat Hellgrammites. I want my Hellgrammite Ned rigs to have a perfectly round worm body, just like a normal Ned does, but then just add the Helgi legs on it. So it performs like a standard Ned head, because that's what I want. I don't want this kind of, flat or half flat Hellgrammite that has all these weird movements and weird actions under the water because water's hitting that flat side at different angles. I want this to perform just like my regular, Ned rig Senko or whatever does. And that's what you're going to get out of this Covert Senko if you cut them in half, I think. So that was my favorite bait, and it came from Yamamoto. But if we keep bopping around GSM here, Buckeye Lures had a dumpster diver jig that had 2 full weed guards that came off of that jig head that actually split the hook rather than being like able to be pushed through the hook like most weed guards are, which was kind of interesting, I guess. They also had a prop wash, which was marketed as like a topwater spinnerbait. Basically, it's a regular spinnerbait with a smaller blade arm than normal, and then it has this big oversized Colorado blade there, and it's supposed to ride really high in the water where you can fish it a lot more like a topwater or a waking style spinnerbait. Now, that's kind of interesting, but the thing about that is you can do that with a lot of spinnerbaits if you reel them fast enough. So the telling sign here will be how slow can I reel this bait and still keep it up near the top, like almost at creeping speeds. That's going to be the telltale sign about whether this is a cool bait or whether this one is a little bit more of a gimmick. And then they had some new RoboWorm colors, which looked amazing. And I'm not a guy that goes to ICAST to look for new colors. I think that's kind of a cop-out with a lot of these companies where they just come out with a new color and then they, play it off as something new and noteworthy. But with RoboWorm, one of their calling cards is their colors. So this is a little bit different. It would be kind of like Megabass. Megabass can get away with calling new colors something that you should actually pay attention to because they put such an emphasis on their paint schemes and their coloring. So RoboWorm's kind of the same way in the soft plastic world. One of their really cool things is how they're able to pour and get these really cool mixed color baits. And my favorite one they came out with this year is a 3-tone pink lemonade, which is like a bright chartreuse, pink, and white in this really cool kind of 3-layer pour. Pretty eye-catching, especially with the popularity of chartreuse and pink in the glide bait world as of late. It's cool to see it done really, really well in a soft plastic from RoboWorm. If we keep moving around GSM, though, let's go to a different brand. Let's go to like Bill Lewis. They had a few new hard baits that were interesting, and the first was the Bill Lewis Brush Crank. Now, this is a crankbait with big wings on it to help it deflect against, any cover that it could encounter. And it's almost like it's got this little armor or shield around it that makes it a little tougher for it to get hung up because of. And while the concept itself is not new, there was an old bait out there, and I'm blanking on the name of it right now, but there was a similar wing design on a crankbait. And it had this really weird kind of like scooped belly on it, and it ran a little bit different. I really wish I could remember the name of that old bait, but there have been like 1 or 2 of these type of things before, but the guys at Bill Lewis were pretty stoked about this one, just for those of you that like to crank and like really nasty stuff. And then there was also the DR18 and the DR24 crankbaits that had some pretty cool body lines on them, where the body almost became like an extension of the bill. So you supposedly get down a little deeper faster because you don't lose all the work that bill is doing when that water gets past the bill and then it hits like a big round head like it does on a normal crankbait. So it would make more sense when you see it. It's going to be tough to explain, but that was kind of an interesting deep diving crankbait from Bill Lewis as well. And then they had their Bill Lewis Snapstick, which was a jerkbait in like a 110 size that's supposed to cast really, really well. It has this cool kind of spring-loaded weight transfer system inside and a shaped bill that should help it perform a little bit better in shallow water. And then they also had the Spit Stick, which was a topwater bait that had some kind of cool hollow chambering in it where water can kind of pass through and help it create some unique spitting and bubble trails. Think of like the, inside of a Pop Max or something like that, where water can physically pass through these kind of gill systems. That was the Spit Stick. And then if we move over to the Buka brand side of things, so again, still under that GSM family, we had a big crawler, and then we also had a new jerkbait that they were calling the El Toro jerkbait, which is maybe the biggest dang traditional style jerkbait that I've ever seen. This thing is, I think it was 7 inches long, and it was meant to throw on like 15 to 20 pound fluorocarbon. And it looks like a traditional 110 style jerkbait, but just on steroids. Like, it is massive. When I put it in my hand, it went from like the tip of my middle finger all the way down to like way past my wrist, like halfway down my forearm. It was crazy. So a huge jerkbait. It was almost like comically big when you pick it up. But when I started to think about it, for me in the fall time, especially when I'm catching those fish on big glide baits and they're shooting up from the bottom, I would be really interested to try this jerkbait and see what size fish I'd be able to draw up from the bottom with a jerkbait that is legitimately twice the size of the jerkbaits that I normally throw. So that was GSM. I think my winner from GSM this year was the Covert Senko. And then I would say probably like the Snapstick jerkbait, the new RoboWorm colors, and I would at least like to try that Prop Wash and the big El Toro jerkbait. And then finally here, let's round out like some of our bigger names in the rod and reel game at least, and let's make one more stop over at Cast King. And I've said over the past couple of years that I feel like Cast King is at least, on the right trajectory in terms of stepping into true tournament-ready gear and shedding a little bit of that, Facebook ad, online, buy one, get one free, cheaper gear brand that they used to have. Now, Cast King is still very much an online brand. Like, they're the ones that work with all of the online influencer types and YouTubers and social media people. So they still very much live in that online influencer world. But as a more traditional fishing consumer, I feel like myself, I think they've done a good job of wrangling in their product lines at least and making them a little bit more cohesive along all of their products, especially their reels. They don't feel as mismatched and just kind of random as they used to. It does start to feel like when you see something, you can start to identify it as a Cast King product. It used to be they just look like they opened up the Doyo or, AliExpress or whatever catalog they got, and they just randomly picked like parts and frames and all kinds of stuff. Like nothing made sense. Now I feel like they've done a better job the past couple of years. So this year they had the new ALTI, which was an aluminum version of the MGTI from last year. You get a lower price point there. So that'll appeal to a lot of folks where the MGTI was just out of their price range, especially for something from Cast King. But they actually had one of the most unique rods that I saw at ICAST. And I'm not a giant fan of Cast King rods, but this rod caught my eye for sure. And it was the DG Power line of rods designed by our friend and kayak angler, Drew Gregory. Now, if you know Drew, you know that he's going to explain this way better than I will. So I caught up with Drew when he had some downtime to give us the details on this new signature rod with Cast King that has some very original and interesting features on it. So let's toss it over to Drew Gregory.
We'll go to the bottom of the rod up because there's a lot of cool, unique features that have never been done. And like my kayak designs that I have a lot of cool, unique features that I brought to kayaks, I've done the same here, and they actually did it. So let's get into it. So at the bottom here, we have on the very bottom of the rod butt, there's actually a female like opening on the very bottom. So it fits a magnet. So we have this cool accessory that can go on a gear track. You can pop the rod up and down right off that magnet. And basically, if you can imagine, you guys, this is audio, so it's like a thimble. It's like a little thimble, but it can go on a gear track. It can go on the deck of your bass boat, your flats boat, and you can literally just set your rod there, and it's 16-pound magnet, so you don't need tubular rod holders ever again on the side of your crates or anything like that. It saves you all that space. And if you need a free hand real quick to retie or work or put a fish in the live well or weigh a fish or whatever on your bass boat on the deck, you just simply put it down, and then and if you flip over in your kayak, like me with my Shoaly, if I'm going down a rapid, I can put them vertical right in between my legs on the vertical wall, those magnets. And if I flip over, then I obviously flip my kayak back over, and all my rods are going to be right there. So it's really cool. And it doesn't like detract at all, add really any extra weight at all. And if it even adds a teeny bit, it's in the rod butt, so it's helping it balance as well. So that's pretty cool. But the next, as you move up, we got oversized like EVA foam grips. So if you know golf, they're using oversized putters these days. Why? Because they're more comfortable. You have more control, more feel. Do you not need more comfort, more control, more feel in fishing? Of course you do. So I wish they would have gone even thicker, but we got to let people build up, right, to this new thing that I think is going to be the future of fishing rods. And EVA handles are going to be thicker, and thicker, because once you feel it, it's way more comfortable. So it's a nice charcoal gray. We got the matte gray finish to the entire rod, which is really nice. So you can see it. If you drop it, looks really cool on a GoPro. If you got a dark background behind you, which normally you do, like the woods or the forest or whatever, so it looks really cool. So selfishly, I like that about it. It's just a nice finish because it's gray. Every reel is going to match with it and look good no matter what color your reel. So that neutral is important. Now, the thing that most people are going to see that stands out the most, I think, is the double trigger. The double trigger is like I like to say it's like a double rhino, double rhino horns. It gives you more options and ways to hold it for better control and feel, and again, power to set the hook. Because a lot of times, even when you're casting, you can't backhand cast or flip quite as accurately. But now with this, the extra control with your index finger on that top trigger, you're locked in. So you can do backhand cast. I'm telling you, I'm not lying, dude. Just a one-handed backhand cast. The rod's not going to fly out of your hand like it tries to do. You literally can be pinpoint accurate with one hand backhand casting like a pro to your left or your right. So with that trigger. So that's a really cool thing about the double trigger. And then in front of the double trigger on the foregrip, we have a four-way flat surface with a fingerprint there. So basically what that's for is any jerk baits or like a spook, for example. This may not be the best jerk bait rod because it's a little powerful for that maybe, but it still could probably work for some people and some jerk baits. But for a lot of baits that we twitch these days, power fishing a koiki, twitching a spook, stuff like that, your finger, or even just winding in a spinnerbait or a chatterbait, your finger is on a big, wide, flat spot on the foregrip that's not rounded, so you have control and force and power to sweep the rod 12 o'clock back to 5:30, 6 o'clock for a powerful hook set. That's what that foregrip's all about. And then you keep going up the rod. You got titanium guides all the way up and down. You have which is really nice that you're getting that quality. And because it's two-piece, as you can see right here, guys, two-piece rod, it has a special connector with like it's basically like a pin system, like a slot and pin system, and it makes sure your guides align perfectly, and it will never come off like typical two-piece rods in the past. Sometimes they could come loose and come off. This will never come off because that pin, when there's pressure on the top half, it's putting pressure on that pin. And so it's actually harder to come off under load than it would be off a load. But because it's two-piece, not only can you transport with it, store it easier, travel with it. I flew with it here to ICAST free of charge. You just walk on the plane. There's no charge for two-piece rods that are that length. But you actually get a cheaper, cheaper is not the best word, but a lower cost transfer down to you as a consumer. If this was a one-piece rod, it would literally be a $200, $225 rod. But the only person who wins on one-piece rods are FedEx, UPS, United States Postal Service. The consumer loses, especially when it's a power fishing rod that you don't need extra sensitivity. If there's any quote-unquote extra sensitivity to a one-piece rod, don't need it for power fishing, because when was the last time you didn't know you had a bite on a spinnerbait or a chatterbait or a buzzbait, swimbait? You know, because the rod gets ripped out of your hand. So we need extra durability and strength. And actually, it's a detriment to have a one-piece rod that's more brittle. It might be a little bit lighter weight, but more brittle and fragile. So when you're high sticking them or boat flipping, they break more often. This one will not break. It's stronger because of that two-piece rod. Fly fishermen will tell you they spend thousands on the rods. They're 4 pieces. They're pulling in 200-pound tarpon. We've been lied to or marketed to, whatever you want to call it, that a one-piece rod is somehow superior than a two-piece. And a lot of times that may have been true when you didn't have a special connector like this. I can understand that logic, but this one is incredible. You guys will love the DG Power from Casking. And there's 4 lengths in casting: 6'8", 7'1", 7'3", 7'6", all your common lengths. And then you've also got a spinning version, which is wild because spinning rods are known for lighter actions, a little bit more finesse, not the DG Power spinning rod. This is made for those of you guys out here, even me included. I will not lie. I can't skip a chatterbait perfectly with a bait caster under a dock every time. I backlash too. Same with a jig, whatever you want to skip. But a spinning rod, we all know, is much easier. So now you can fire a spinning rod wherever you want with 20 or 30-pound braid, but you got backbone in a spinning rod to horse them out, and a special trigger on the EVA foam handle above where the reel seat is. So you can put all your hands and fingers above the reel seat so you don't get the awkward like callus in between your knuckles and stuff. And you can horse fish in with power with a spinning rod and get cast into places you've never been able to do before. The whole system is really cool. You guys will love it. Hopefully you can understand that if you go out there and you buy, I would prefer you guys buy 3 or 4 of one length, and then all your power fishing baits are on one rod, one length, and every time you pick up one to the other, your casting accuracy and your feel is the exact same. It's like a single length iron in golf. It's the exact same every time. You're not going to be inaccurate for 4 or 5 casts until you get used to it, and then you make a few more casts and you switch again. Then you're inaccurate. So it's about efficiency, and that's kind of DG Power in a nutshell, and there's no nutshell. That was long, but it's a lot of features, a lot, and for $139, pretty incredible rod. And yeah, you guys are gonna love it. Check it out from Casking, DG Power.
So there's the rod in Drew's own words. It is a 2-piece with a very interesting connection style so that it keeps those 2 pieces from ever turning or ever getting crooked, which is one of my big pet peeves with 2-piece rods. The molding on the side of the foam handles is cool, but the big thing that's going to be out of the box and most people are going to notice right off the bat is that double trigger. It looks trippy, like the normal trigger that you have on a casting rod. Just picture 2 of them, and they're probably like, 3 or 4 inches apart. It does look weird. It does take some getting used to, but once I played around with it and you mess with it in your hands and you get kind of a feel for it, it does sort of make sense. Because at the end of the day, 2 anchor points or 2 contact points for your hand are usually better than 1. And that seems to be what they're going for here. And it is a unique way to try and get some more control and a better grip for a rod that is meant for power fishing. And the one thing I am going to say is I have small hands. I will admit that right off the bat. And sitting there with Drew and messing with this rod, we found that I actually will hold this rod differently than he will in multiple situations. Like if we're talking holding it straight up and down, holding it like you're working a jerkbait, holding it like I'm working a chatterbait, where I split my fingers is different than where he split his fingers. So this is sort of a pick your own adventure style grip to see what feels best for you. There's no actual right or wrong way to use these double triggers. It just gives you 2 contact points to play with. So at the end of the day, I do see the reasoning behind it, and I do think it's a cool idea. I am a sucker for people that come to something like ICAST and bring something out of the box. That's what it's for. We always complain that nothing is original, that there's no cool ideas, that I've seen everything before. This is the type of stuff that you go to ICAST to see. A rod that has a double trigger on it so that you get a better grip and better control in your hand is objectively a cool idea. So I am curious to see, once you get this rod out on the water, how much leverage it really gets you when you lay into a chatterbait fish or a spinnerbait fish or something like that. But color me intrigued. I'm a big fan of people that push the envelope and do something a little different and outside of the box. Hats off to Drew. He definitely did that with this new DG Power rod from Cast King, which also retails at $139. So a very affordable option from Drew if you want to look at a really unique rod that I saw this past week. All right, let's move over out of the rod and reel game for a second, and let's move over to some electronics. And if you heard anything from this past week, we do need to take a trip over to the Garmin booth, because Garmin made a big splash earlier last week when they finally released to the public that LiveScope 2 was coming out, with not one, but two different transducers to choose from, the LVS 42 HD and the LVS 44. And to tell us more about it, I caught up with John at Garmin to give us a really simple, quick look at LiveScope 2, the two transducers, and what makes them different from the current LiveScope system.
Yeah, so we have two brand new LiveScope transducers, the LVS 42 HD and the 44. And what you're going to really see is the detail. So the 42 can work out to like 125 feet and the 44 out to about 250 feet. But you're going to see much better detail. Those small targets that are holding near the bottom, you're going to be able to see, especially on the 42 HD. The other benefit now is there's no black box needed with either one of them. So you can run right to power and to network between the two. We also include a sensor for water. So if it's deployed into the water, the transducer turns on. Once you take it out of the water, the transducer turns off. So those are some of the really big benefits you're going to see.
I've always heard, is this an old wives' tale or is it true? Is it bad to leave the transducer on when it's out of the water? Is that why it shuts off now automatically?
That is true. So you don't want to leave any transducer, be it LiveScope or even a Transamount transducer, turned on and out of the water, pinging away. Heat and all that is going to affect the transducer.
So who's the target consumer for the 42 versus the 44?
So really, if people are actually going to kind of migrate over from the LVS 34, a lot of them are going to probably choose a 42 HD. Like I said, it's good to out to about 125 feet, but that target separation now at that 30-foot range is going to give you those small, 3.5-inch targets that you're able to see much better with that 42. Now, you do a little bit more hunting and you're looking for more distance, that 44, which you kind of can think of as kind of like the all-in-one, it does really good at distance and really well close in, they might do the 44. Personally, I'm going from a 34 to a 42 HD, because about 90% of what I do fishing-wise is 100 feet or in. So that's why I'm going to choose that one.
Okay, so there you go. To look at it quite simply, there are two new transducers. You have the LVS 42 HD, which John says is good out to about 125 feet. And then you have the LVS 44, which is a long-range use transducer that goes out to like 250 feet. And if I'm being honest with myself, I'm never using live sonar to look out 250 feet away. Honest to goodness, most of what I use live sonar for is going to be like 80 to 90 feet and under. So if it were me, and it sounds like John is in the same boat from the clip that we just listened to, I would pick the LVS 42 HD over the LVS 44. But regardless of which you pick, the detail is going to get bumped up noticeably from LiveScope 1 to LiveScope 2, which is always great. More target separation, better actual detail when you're looking at the bottom and you're trying to figure out what is going on down there on the actual bottom, whether it's rock, whether it's fish sitting down there, whether it's weeds. That bump up in detail is going to be very nice. You also get no more black box. Praise the Lord, it's about freaking time. Humminbird did it years and years ago. I'm so glad that Garmin finally nixed the black box. We can finally get rid of it. The black box is dead. Go tell your friends. We no longer need to worry about this third piece of equipment that you have to find a place for and you have to keep safe. Especially for my kayak folks, that is huge. To see now two of the big three in terms of electronics move away from a black box, that is a big, big deal for those of us that are trying to really streamline our setups and you want less gear to take with you, just a cleaner overall setup now that the black box is officially dead. And then one of the other things that I think is really cool is that we get a new feature of a water sensor attached to this transducer. And here's the thing. I told John when I was talking to him off microphone and off record, I was like, man, when I had LiveScope, I always pulled my transducer out of the water. I clipped it horizontal to my kayak, and then I just went to like my side imaging screen or my down imaging screen, and I just went on with my day. I never actually turned off my transducer, and I would bet money nobody really does that either. Like, you either have to unplug your transducer or install some sort of rocker kill switch, or you have to go into the graph itself and manually turn off the transducer, which I'm guaranteeing no one really does. Like, I've never seen anybody really do that. I never did it. And you heard John say there, that's not good for the transducer. It's not good to leave the transducer on out of the water. And just because you move away from that screen and you go to your down imaging or your side imaging screen, that doesn't mean that that transducer isn't still on. It is. So this is a big deal when you now have a feature in place where the transducer automatically turns off when it doesn't sense water. So it's going to protect the longevity of that transducer. It's going to help a lot of you folks that have had transducer issues over the years, myself included. I'm sure if I would have had this feature, I wouldn't have burned up my transducer as bad as I did originally. So I think that's a good move there as well. And if you're looking at LiveScope 2, you're going to look at about $2,200 total just for the transducer. If you already have a compatible Garmin graph, all you really need to buy, most people I think are probably going to go with that LVS 42 HD for just under $2,200. All right, now let's keep moving on here. Now that we've got past a lot of the heavy hitters, let's go and try and search for some interesting, out-of-the-box, smaller companies and some pleasant surprises at ICAST this year. And there were so many, it's quite literally impossible to include them all. So I'm going to have to skip over a lot of stuff just because we're already like hours and hours into this episode. So you do have to cut these things off at some point. But I'm going to try and pepper in quite a few of these that we saw as we were walking around as well. So first off, not necessarily a smaller company by any means, but NetBait had a few interesting soft plastics that I will probably buy and try once they come out. The first and the main one was called the Dirty 30 worm, which is a giant like hellgrammite or centipede looking worm. It's got 30 legs, 15 on each side, which is obviously where the name comes from. Yes, I sat there and I counted each one of them because I had a feeling that that's where the Dirty 30 came from. And it has that cool hex tech texture on them that a lot of the NetBait baits have moved to. They're 5 inches long. They come 5 to a pack. There's a clamshell that keeps them perfect. They have bait fuel infused in them if that's important to you. But the shape itself, I'm going to buy, and honestly, I'll probably do the same thing that I'm going to do with those covert Senkos from Yamamoto. I'm probably just going to cut these in half and Ned rig them and see how it goes. They also had a giant finesse worm that I didn't get to measure, but I think it's like 14 or 15 inches that ran all the way from the tip of my fingers down past my elbow. Like, they were giant. So very cool, very long and skinny finesse worm from NetBait. And then you also had the Virus, which is their sort of like tentacled creature bait that could be kind of fun to mess around with. So that was NetBaits. Let's keep moving here down the aisle. The next product that we saw was for you kayak folks out there looking for an alternative to your motor system, like I always am. There was this new ePropulsion Technology Limited set of motors. That was the company name, ePropulsion Technology Limited. And the two motors we saw here were called the K-Lite 750 and the K-Max 220. Now, no matter what motor you choose from them, there are some awesome features that I really, really liked, and I hope becomes more of a like a norm in kayak fishing. So the throttle is by far the best throttle that I've ever felt on a kayak motor. It was smooth. It doesn't get caught on your, pants or shirt when you stand up and accidentally send yourself into Mach 10 and then you almost fall out of your kayak. It's very flush mounted. There's not anything there to catch on. It's very, very responsive. It's not like, the best way I can explain it is my Newport, when I push it forward, there's a lot of like wiggle room in there where it's not really pressurized. Like, it's not really doing anything. It's just like empty movement. There's none of that with this throttle. There is tension the entire way, and every like tiny little millimeter you move this thing actually has a response from the motor. A very, very nice throttle system, first and foremost. It also has two different features on that throttle. You can enter boost mode, which obviously gives you a temporary boost of power. Now it's going to drain your battery a little bit more, but if you need like to really hurry and you need to boost that, you do have that button there. You also have creep mode, which is the opposite, where you can almost cut the power in half that you're giving that throttle, and then you get a lot more responsiveness and you can make like micro adjustments to fish at slow speeds. So I really liked the throttle system. I know that's kind of nerdy, but it was something that I was like, man, I wish my Newport and every other kayak motor had this throttle. And even cooler, it's got this like separate backlit LED screen that shows you your throttle percentage, your mode, all kinds of good info up there. And that can be mounted wherever. So you can put that on like the front of your kayak. You can put it off to the side. The one that they had on display had it like actually up at the front by kind of like the hatch. So you get a little bit more of like a car dashboard feel to this thing, where the information for the throttle is not attached to the throttle itself. It's a completely separate little unit that you can put wherever makes sense for you. Now, there were two models here. You had the one, which was the K-Lite 750, where the battery is actually integrated into the motor. So there's no external battery at all. The motor is the battery. So you charge that motor, you take it, you attach it, and that's it. You don't have to worry about where you're going to store a battery. But then your next thing would be like, well, all right, you're going to get less battery and you're pretty limited because it has this tiny battery inside the K-Lite 750. They actually have an external hookup where you can hook up an additional battery to it if you need like longer range or you need it to last you longer, which was a cool feature. And then if you go over to the K-Max 220, that's your more traditional kayak motor where you don't have a battery integrated into it. You have an external battery. So that K-Max 220 is way faster. I guess they were saying they can get like 7 to 8 miles per hour out of this thing on fairly heavy kayaks. But here's the big capital BUT, like there always is with almost every product. You have to use their proprietary batteries. And their batteries are 48 volt, 20 amp hour, and they cost just under $1,000 a piece. So there is your big downfall. For me and for a lot of people, it is more of like a Torqeedo replacement than it is a Newport replacement. And I've said this a billion times, I want so bad somebody to come in and offer us something like Newport does, but fixing all of the issues with Newport. We want a new kayak motor where we can use our own battery, but is not as cheap and doesn't have as many problems and a lot of weird little quirks that Newport motor has. But at the end of the day, a big deal breaker for me is I want the ability to use my own batteries and not the batteries that the motor company sells you. That's the one thing that Newport has going for them that no one else really does, except for like Garmin, and Garmin costs $10 bajillion. So they're still not realistic yet for most people. But when I saw this kayak motor, before I realized that you had to use their battery, I was like ready to try and buy one on the spot somehow. Like, take my credit card. I have been wishing for someone to come out with a kayak motor to rival Newport, and I would be the first in line to buy it. But no. Obviously, my deal breaker here is that you have to use the e-propulsion battery, which I am not going to do. So at the end of the day, this kind of falls in the same camp as the Garmin did last year. A very cool motor, very cool features. I feel like it's pushing a lot of things forward, but it's still not something that I'm ready to buy because there are still a few deal breakers for me, one of which is you having to use their battery versus the batteries that I already have and like. And then speaking of Newport, I guess while we're on the kayak motor train, Newport did come out with a new bow mount trolling motor called the Stance, if anybody is interested in that. But honestly, there are already some great bow mount trolling motors out there that I would use over this Stance. You know, I'm obviously a little partial, but I would go with the Minn Kota Tarova before I go with this new Stance. The Minn Kota is just way more feature rich and you're going to have a better time with it. But for those of you that are Newport folks, you do now have bow and stern mount options for kayak motors from Newport. Now, if we want to make the turn from like big motors to quite possibly the smallest bait on the entire show floor, many of you might have seen my picture that I already posted because it kind of took off online last week. But the folks over at Epic Bait Molds had some very interesting nano molds for you bait makers that were literally the smallest crawl, stick bait, and swim bait that I've ever seen. Specifically that crawl, their little nano crawl, it was mind-blowingly small. Like it was, I think 0.4 inches is what they listed at. But man, I got to tell you, I think this thing is even smaller than 0.4 inches. Like you need a magnifying glass to see this crawl bait. And the amount of detail and precision that they were able to get into a bait mold that small is really, really cool. The actual mold itself, I think, was like an 8-shooter, and it was the size of like half a deck of cards. Like, it is just mind-blowing how much precision can go into something that small. But for those of you out there that enjoy microfishing, trout fishing, small creeks for darters and chubs and shiners and things like that, these are really cool. Now, you do actually have to be into real microfishing to use those. You're not just going to go out and throw these on standard tackle that you have in your tackle box. But holy cow, is it cool to see a true craw, worm, and swim bait that small. So shout out to the Epic Bait Mold folks. They went a little bit everywhere. They had a bait mold for like a hot dog bait. They had the biggest worm that I've ever seen walking around the show floor. So both extremes. If you're into really cool kind of like small batch custom tackle and you like making your own soft plastics, Epic Bait Molds are cool people to check out. They have a ton of awesome molds over on their website that you can buy that are way different than your normal, do-it molds or wherever you get those like big mass-produced molds. Okay, one other interesting thing that I wanted to talk about here, and this definitely falls into the category of very cool idea, but I'll never buy, came to us from Bubba, and it was their Pro Series Smart Bump Board. Now, you know that if it's Bubba, it's going to be insanely expensive, and this bump board was no exception. But Bubba, the people that make like the really expensive red scales and pliers and knives and accessories, really nice stuff, but way out of my price range a lot of times, they came out with the first electric bump board that I've ever seen. So it looks like a catch board or a hog trough or whatever you want to call it, but it has this little sliding pointer by the measuring numbers at the base where you can slide this thing up and down the board to measure your fish. And it actually reads out the measurement on this super bright, completely digital screen at the 0-inch mark on that board. So as you slide that measurement indicator up and down the board, the screen will show the measurement in like, I think, a 1/4-inch increments. So all you got to do is just slide this little thing up to the tail of your fish, and then it will read. So if it's like a 20-inch fish, you put it on the board, you slide this little thing up to the tail, and it will read 20.00 inches on that big LED screen. And it is cool and it is fun to play with, but you're probably like me and you're like, well, why the heck do I need that? I don't need a digital LED screen to read the length of my fish when I can just look at the lines on the board. Well, that's what I thought too. But the 3 big things I think that this adds for you, one, that screen can also log your total length for any number of fish and it can call for you. So if you're in like a 5-fish tournament by length, it will actually keep track of your total length for your biggest 5, kind of like their scales do, right? You can build a bag or you can build a limit, and then you can see where you're at any given time, and you don't have to do all of the math. Number 2 is you can actually program the legal limits and sizes for each species into this bump board. So if I catch a bass and the legal limit is 12 inches, I have that loaded into the board. And if I select bass as the species on that screen, when I go to measure it and I slide that slider to different lengths, it will show red if that fish is under the legal limit. And then it'll show like back to normal or green when it's over the 12-inch limit. So you just get these really nice visual indicators about whether or not that fish is legal, whether or not you can keep that fish, whether it counts toward your tournament. And then even better, when you program those sizes, so this would be kind of number 3, I guess, the LEDs on the board itself, there are these little red dots at like every 1/4 inch on that board. Those light up red for the slot limits that you cannot keep. So if you can't keep anything under 10 inches, well, then it lights up red for everything below 10. Or if it's like, okay, you can't keep anything between 12 and 18 inches, then that segment lights up red. So really quickly, you do get these nice visuals when you put a fish on the board, you know right away whether that is a fish you can keep or not. So that's interesting itself, but it comes in at an insane price point of $250. So that is a heck no for me, but I can still admit that it's a cool idea and a cool product, and I did have fun playing with it. Also, for people like me that are like kayak river rats, I would break that thing so fast. Like I have broken 3 normal catch boards, which are supposed to be like indestructible. I can't imagine how fast I would ruin an electronic measuring board with like an LED screen, lights, batteries, all that. I'd give it like 4 trips before I kill this thing. So just not for me for many reasons, but regardless, a very cool product and the first one of its kind that I've ever seen at least. And then if you want to talk about some more diamond in the rough things that I found while I was walking around, an interesting company called Stealth Mode, who makes like a rod holder attachment for boats and kayaks. Now, this is again like a perfect example of why you stop and talk to people, because this would easily have been a company that I would have looked at for half a second and walked by, but I'm glad I didn't. The lady that was working the booth was very nice and actually walked me through how this rod holder works. And while I don't use rod holders like this for trolling or like your traditional bazooka type rod holders, I was really intrigued with the way that it held the rod in place, because you put the rod in at like the normal, 45-degree rod angle, like you would do if you're trolling around in the kayak. But these types of holders, instead of just sitting in there in that plastic tube, there was this rubberish strap kind of thing where you push down on the butt of the rod or the handle of the rod, and it collapses and puts pressure around that rod so it can't move. So think like very similar to those old slap bracelets we used to have when we were kids. That's kind of the best way I can describe it. When you push down, it sort of slaps around it and keeps this pressure and collapses and kind of hugs your rod, keeping it firmly in place. And I looked her straight in the face once she showed me how this works. And I said, I'll be honest, I'm never going to use this as a traditional rod holder, but have you ever thought about making a paddle holder with the same technology and the same material? Because that would be something I would buy tomorrow if they made it. And she kind of laughed. And I'm guessing they must have had a couple people say the same thing to her, because she's like, yeah, that's probably going to happen at some point. That would be a good idea. So I kind of explained how I would do it, just like a simple track mount option, no top, no anything, no strap that goes over it. Just push straight down on that paddle and it would grip it and slap around it. Similar to the action you get from like a Roto Grip paddle holder, but this seemed way more secure than the Roto Grips that I use. So if you could put one on each side of your kayak, then you could lay it across the gunnel and you could go across. Or if you put two off to like the right or two off to the left side, then you have what I do, which is your paddle completely out of the way, just hanging off the side of your kayak, super secure. But either way, it would be really easy to just pick up and push down that kayak paddle and just have that same method and that same action you're used to with a Roto Grip, but just better grip on it in general. Because I don't know about you, but my paddle comes out of my Roto Grips, it seems like every 30 minutes on my kayak, and I'm ready for something a little bit better. And then while we're still at the Stealth Mode booth, they also had another product there that they were calling the Stow Bar. And it's just this simple little strap that mounts to the inside wall of your kayak or really anywhere. And it's just something that you can slide your smaller accessories in, and then it snugly holds them in place, because there's one exterior and one interior strap that, again, just kind of hug your gear and keep them in that same spot. They're not like magnetic, they're not tethered or anything. It's just pressure that keeps them there. And the Stow Bar was only $12.99 each. So I'm thinking I'll probably be buying a couple of these to play with as well. It worked great for sunglasses, pliers, scissors, phones, anything that's probably, I'd say like an inch thick or thinner. Slide that right in there and it stayed put really easily. That'd just be something to help keep the inside of my kayak a little bit more clean. So that was a company I'd never heard of before, but it seemed like somebody that I would keep my eye on, was a company called Stealth Mode. Another one along those lines, if you want to talk about really quick, easy organization, was a company called Cling, C-L-I-N-G, that made these sort of along the same lines, kind of high-powered magnetic plates that you can attach with 3M adhesive, which is included on the back of those plates, to anywhere where you want to stick loose tackle all in one place. So you can keep like jigs, hard baits, anything with hooks really sticks great to these little magnetic plates. And I was skeptical at first because I thought, well, like a crankbait or a jerkbait or something, all that's really magnetic are those hooks. And those hooks are so small, those little trebles, they're not really going to stick there and stay secure. Nope. They work like a charm. So we did it with spinner baits, terminal tackle, top waters, jerk baits, almost anything sticks to these really, really easily. So you just have like a more organized place to have that sort of boneyard of baits that you're switching back and forth with all the time. They had a ton of sizes, everything from little magnetic plates the size of like a postage stamp, all the way up to the size of like my laptop. And even cooler, they can engrave them with whatever you wanted. So if you have a logo, if you have a YouTube channel, if you have a sponsor and you want to put that name on there, they could laser engrave them. I think this company is pretty popular in the fly fishing world because they're out of Montana. So that checks out. It seems like they did have some stuff that was geared toward fly fishing, especially the smaller magnetic plates. But it looks like they're trying to expand a little bit into more like traditional fishing gear. And it's definitely something that I would be interested in trying and putting on my kayak somewhere. Just a place where normally I put my loose baits in like my cup holder or right in front of me, it would be nice to have a magnet system where you could slap those out of the way. So that was cling fishing. If we want to go really, really rapid fire here, you had a new size of the Spro KGB Chad Shad coming out, which I'm very much looking forward to. And they're going to introduce some European Spro colors in it as well. So you get like a really full bright chartreuse model, which I will be ordering the second that it's available. I was excited for those. Baits reels had some new stuff over there. They had a spinning reel that they unveiled that I didn't like. It was really heavy, really clunky. But one of the things that caught my eye over there is they did have the skeleton, because they do the one-piece CNC type frames. They had a frame sitting on their booth that was clearly for a 400 size reel. And that in and of itself is kind of exciting, because I wish there was more competition in big swim bait and big musky reels. But what was really interesting is there was a third little hole in that frame. So there was the hole that obviously where the handle would go. There was a hole where the tension knob would go. And then there was a third one that was right behind it. I asked the guys, they would not tell me what that third hole was for, but it's definitely for some sort of adjustment that you're not used to seeing on a casting reel. So I am curious what that is. I wish they would have told me, but they wouldn't. So I'll be keeping my eye on what they have up their sleeve for like an additional adjustment from the outside of that 400 size reel. And then you had a lot of other stuff here, like Nishini Lures is always incredible. Hiroshi over there, he makes some awesome hard baits. It's always great to see him and see what he's got up his sleeve. The new Voyix, I think is how you say it, the Mosa kayak series, where it's a lot more like technology integrated, was cool to see. Just a ton of stuff, but I'm sure you're looking at your time on this episode right now. And at some point we probably need to cut this off and we have to move on. But safe to say, there was a ton to see at ICAST this year. There was a ton of new products, baits, rods, reels, kayak accessories, a little bit of everything. And overall, I think it was a pretty solid year for new gear. All right, next up, let's get to the award winners. And this is something that I have put a lot of stock in the past. I used to take this very, very seriously. Like I would show up, the very first thing I would do would be vote for the Best in Category awards. I'd show up early the next day to vote for Best in Show awards. I really took it to heart because as a media member that gets a vote, I felt like it was my duty to actually go through and look at the gear and make sure that I made an informed decision on what I vote for. Over the years, I've definitely softened on this, where I just don't put as much stock into the award winners as I used to. There's a lot of reasons for that. One, because as you see how things go, you see how they're not fixed by any means, but you can kind of stack the votes a little bit, and you can sort of maybe rally the troops and manipulate who wins and who doesn't win, just depending on how big your company is, how many people you have there at ICAST, how many dealers you work with, how big your network is. Like some of that stuff does make a big difference in terms of who ends up winning. So I've just kind of stopped putting so much stock in the winners of the ICAST awards. And I think that has helped me have a better outlook on ICAST in general, where you don't get mad about, oh, why didn't this win? Why did this win? This isn't even cool. This isn't going to be around in 5 years. You just say, you know what? I'm here to see all the new gear, and whoever wins, wins. I don't really care on that side of things. But it's worth mentioning who ends up winning the big awards, like for the things that we actually care about. So if you want to go freshwater rod, the winner of the best freshwater rod at ICAST 2026 was that new St. Croix Triumph. So that one makes a whole lot of sense. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, we were very impressed when we picked up that rod for the first time. If you want to go to reels, the best freshwater reel this year was the Corrado DC 150. Again, makes sense. It will be a big seller. People will be excited about it. But if you think back to our stop over at Shimano, I'm just not really sure the difference between last generation and this generation is enough to get super excited about. And then if you want to go to baits really fast, these are the other couple that I think make sense for us. The best freshwater hard bait went to American Bait Works Cinch Fishing Artisan Wake and Crank 130. These are baits that I just don't understand. They're like half art and half glide bait, swim bait type deal. They're very, very detailed. They have a ton of different little like realistic lines and carvings on them. I think they're actually made out of carvings to start out. There's like an artist guy that makes these really intricate glide and swim baits. It's just not something that I think deserves to win this award. I think there were a lot better hard baits in this category that probably should have won. And then your best freshwater soft lure went to that Crush City CEO urchin bait. Again, I think we all know how I feel about the urchin baits, so I will skip over that a little bit as well. And then some other things, your general tackles. So your non-braided fishing line winner was Brawler Monofilament from Seagar. They are doing some cool stuff with monofilament this year. You saw a couple people lean into that. I'm just not a guy that throws a ton of mono. I throw it for top waters and I use it for backing. That's really about it. The tackle management system winner went to Busby for their big urchin box. Like, again, you're starting to see some themes on some of this. And then the final thing here, and I saved it for the end because it won not one, but 2 awards, was the combo of the year. So your rod and reel combo winner went to the Rhino 30, which is a 6-foot, 6-inch, 2-piece medium spinning combo from Rather Outdoors, who owns Strike King and Lose and Zebco. Rather Outdoors came out with this Rhino 30 casting combo, and they came out with a lot of Rhino stuff. And the reason that I saved this one for the end is because it also won Best in Show. So this was crowned the best product of ICAST 2026, was this new Rhino spinning combo. And Rhino in general this year was a brand that I had never heard of before. I think they basically unveiled it this year, and they did a launch where it looks like Rather Outdoors is going after Ugly Stick. And Ugly Stick is the top grossing rod in terms of sales in like all of North America, I believe. Like the amount of sales that Ugly Stick does is insane. So what you're seeing here, and at first it didn't make sense to me. It's like, why is Rather Outdoors trying to take on the 800-pound gorilla in the room? It's Ugly Stick. They have that market locked up so well. And then over the next couple days, it actually hit me. It's like, well, they're probably not trying to overtake Ugly Stick. They know they're not going to do that. But what they're saying is, Ugly Stick, you sell so many rods and so many combos that even if we can get like, 5% of that market, 10% of that market, we're going to be sitting real pretty in terms of gross sales. So I think they just said, hey, this pie is big enough and one person has owned this whole pie for so long that we would like to try and take a bite out of it. So that is Rhino, the new brand coming out from Rather Outdoors. They won Best in Show with their Rhino 30 6-foot 6-inch 2-piece medium spinning combo. All right. And finally here, I think I'm going to give you like my top 3 products from ICAST 2026. I think these are going to be my Best in Show. And my Best in Show products are going to be chosen based on what I think has staying power, what appeals to the most people, and at the end of the day, what's going to catch the most fish. Like, I don't really care about trends. I don't care about branding. I don't care about any of that stuff. What is cool? What is unique? What characteristics and baits and rods and reels and whatever actually have staying power? I feel like this year, if I had to give you a top 3, if we start at number 3, it's close. I think I might actually give it to that Rapala Avatar Shad. I know that, again, it's not the pick that a lot of people are really going to go with, but I just think that is going to be such a little fish catcher and so many different ways to rig it, so many different intricacies to where those bills are, where those lines and those kind of fins are on it, how swimmy it is, that we are going to see this used in a lot of really cool ways. You're going to see it as a trailer. You're going to see it on scroungers. You're going to see it on ball heads, swim jigs. Like, there's so many different ways to rig this, and it is so weird and unique that I feel like I'm going to have a lot of fun throwing this Avatar Shad. So if I had to go the 3B, I guess, I almost said that Rapala Strida because of that screw lock system. I think the idea of having this interchangeable weight system across a lot of Rapala baits is very cool. I think that's something that you're going to see 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And you're going to remember the day that like, oh, this wasn't even a thing a couple years ago. And now they have this system of weights that I can screw into all of these different hard baits and manipulate the fall rate. I think that could be very cool. You might see that in jerk baits soon. Maybe you see it in some sort of oddball crankbait. I don't know, but I could see that screwdriver system being something we look at in a couple years and being like, yeah, that's still around and it's still playing today. If I go to number 2, I actually think I'm going to give it to the St. Croix Triumph. It was just one of those products, again, that just blows your mind because of what you know about the previous version. What I know about Triumphs, my experience with Triumphs have always been this like thick, stiff, beefy rod that just didn't have a lot of play and action to it, but was at an entry-level price point with St. Croix. It was heavy. It just had that broomstick-shaped handle that nobody really liked. And then you picked up this St. Croix Triumph, the new version that I didn't even know was coming out, and I was like physically wowed when I picked it up and played with it. So that doesn't happen very often. I'm excited to see not only a revamp of a very important rod to St. Croix, but also at a very important price point to those of you at home that might want to look into getting back into St. Croix and something that isn't going to break the bank to do it. And then number one, again, you're going to call me weird. You're going to call me stupid. My favorite bait that I saw at ICAST this year, I'm not even joking when I say it might be the Z-Man Chattertail. A little bait that starts up really well, that will catch any fish, any species, anywhere, anytime, and really took a timeless bait, the rooster tail, the inline spinner that everybody grew up fishing, that will catch fish in any situation. When you're struggling, you go to some pond somewhere, you can't buy a bite, you pull out a rooster tail, it works. It's not like the coolest or sexiest bait out there. I think sometimes we look at it as a little bit more of like an introductory bait or for kids, but at the end of the day, it's a fish catching machine. And Z-Man put their spin on it, and they now have a Chattertail that starts up really well, that stays consistent, that's going to catch the heck out of fish, and comes in at a price point that is at or below what a rooster tail currently is, and makes some great adjustments like being able to change your hook out and all that kind of stuff. So overall, again, I know it's like definitely not the coolest answer to have, but I think in terms of a bait that is going to be around and they're going to put it in people's hands and kids' hands and everything, and it's going to catch so many darn fish, is that Z-Man Chattertail. So I'm actually going to crown the Z-Man Chattertail my best in show from 2026. All right, everybody, that is our episode today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to this. I hope this was helpful. I hope this made you feel a little bit like you came to ICAST with me. You got to see and hear some of the new products that are coming out and hear some really unfiltered opinions on them, what I liked, what I didn't like, what I think you need to pay attention to, what I think you don't need to pay attention to, and really just try and put everything that I saw that I thought was noteworthy in a couple hours here that you can go back and listen to as many times as you want. So that is our ICAST episode today. I appreciate you all sticking with us. I know this is the longest episode we do all year long. I know I probably sounded a little sick throughout this, so I appreciate you putting up with that. If you have any questions, anything I can help with at all, shoot me an email, shoot me a DM at Tackle Talk Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. You can shoot me an email at tackletalkpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on the website, tackletalkpodcast.com, and we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.